Chapter 997. Wei Huan was so angry that she wanted to explode. She wanted to drag Bai Yunj far away from her cousin. When Wen Jiuwan saw this scene, the corners of her mouth could not help but twitch. She did not expect Bai Yunj to be so childish. Brother. After Bai Yunj saw the little girl's anger, he turned around and wanted to coax her. You want to accompany Tseng Su too? The man asked unhurriedly. Bai Yunj. Why was this D*MN man so difficult to coax? Soon, Wei Huan also came to deliver her head. Brother Hua, it's Christmas today. Are you planning to go back to the old residence for Christmas? Mo must miss you. It's better for the family to be happy during the holidays. The man's tone was light. How can I be happy with him around? Wei Huan's smile froze. Reality proved that it was better not to talk nonsense with Hua Shidu. On the court, only Bai Yunj raised his eyebrows when he heard this. A hint of playfulness flashed past his eyes. After getting out of the car, Wei Huan and Wen Jiuwan greeted each other obediently and asked Tseng Su to send them home. Bai Yunj followed behind Hua Shidu. He felt that the man's footsteps were getting faster and faster, and it was a little difficult for him to keep up. No matter what, Tseng Su had to take responsibility for this. Suddenly, Hua Shidu, who was walking in front, heard Bai Yunj's shout and immediately turned around, thinking that Bai Yunj had sprained her ankle. But in the next second, Hua Shidu saw her pouncing over and subconsciously opened his arms, allowing her to pounce into his arms. She hugged his waist tightly with both hands and refused to let go. Sometimes, the young man's straightforward and passionate love and blatant intimacy were hard to reject. Brother, don't be angry. I didn't go to eat with him either. The surrounding snow covered the sky. The man's tall and jade-like figure looked even more noble. The corners of his lips curled up imperceptibly. However, on the surface, he only said casually, Then when did you go out with him last night? Bai Yunj. It seemed that Tseng Su could not stay. Before Bai Yunj could say anything, the man suddenly stretched out his hand lazily and tidied the young lady's black hair. His voice was low and magnetic, making people confused. My family's young lady is getting more and more beautiful. It's indeed easy to be thought of. Even Bai Yunj looked at him in a daze. I still have a meeting. Go back and change your clothes first. If you miss old Master Qin, I'll arrange for the driver to send you to the Qin family's old mansion. Bai Yunj inexplicably sensed that the man was not in a good mood. In the living room, Bai Yunj leaned against the sofa and dried her hair. Auntie Miao brought a bowl of soup over. Miss, drink the soup to warm yourself up. Thank you, Aunt Miao. Bai Yunj's lips curved and she took it quickly. Aunt Miao smiled and said, Drink slowly. Aunt Miao will help you dry your hair. Auntie Miao had always doted on Bai Yunj, and cared about Bai Yunj as much as her own daughter. Sir really dotes on Mississippi usually, Sir never comes back on this day. Auntie Miao smiled as she dried Bai Yunj's hair. Is he at the old mansion? Bai Yunj asked instinctively. Auntie Miao shook her head. Usually, Sir is abroad at this time. He will only be back after a month. Bai Yunj's eyes darkened and she drank the soup slower. He must have specially stayed behind to celebrate the festival with Miss. Auntie Miao smiled from ear to ear. Bai Yunj subconsciously looked at the second floor. Soon, Hua Shidu heard a knock on the study door. Brother, I have a gift for you after the meeting. The man raised his eyebrows, but the others in the video did not hear the sound outside the door. End of chapter. Chapter 998. However, when they saw the president suddenly stop, everyone was a little confused. Then, when the next person began to report, everyone was still in a heavy mood, and did not dare to look up at the man's expression. Who knew? The man's slender and good-looking fingertips tapped the back of his hand rhythmically and suddenly said, The meeting ends here. Other than the improvements I mentioned, we'll discuss everything else next time. After that, the man directly cut off the video conference. The others looked at each other and did not leave. Boss, what's going on? Someone could not help but ask. Could it be that President Hua is also celebrating the holiday with someone today? A certain senior executive who had always been famous for his gossip looked at Tseng Su excitedly. President Tseng, don't you think so? I don't know, don't ask me. Sung Soo continued to chat. Just as he was drinking tea guiltily, he heard another senior executive ask excitedly. President Hua. Could it be that he's hiding a mistress and has a girlfriend? Sung Soo spat out his tea. Hey, that's not right. I heard that some time ago. There was a young lady who went to the president's office in a private elevator. If it's a girlfriend, it should be this one, right? You're wrong. I saw this young lady last time too. She was still wearing her school uniform. No matter how scumbag President Hua is, it's impossible for him to lay his hands on a female high school student. Sung Soo's hand trembled so much that he could not hold the teacup properly. Was that a female high school student? She was clearly a vixen. She had completely eaten Master Du. On the other side, Bae Yunj was still sending messages to the small group. Bae Yunj. What gift should I give a boy for Christmas? He'll be happier? Lu Yuanxi? Chu Zhixing. Daddy Pei, are you in a relationship? Lu Yuanxi. We're working hard in high school and you're taking leave to date. Bae Yunj. No. Immediately after, Lu Yuanxi's attitude took a 180-degree turn. Lu Yuanxi, give him shoes and watches. They're all good. Bae Yunj also remembered that she had bought a watch last time. She also walked towards the drawer while sending messages. Bae Yunj. What if he's not in a good mood? How can I make him happy? As soon as this message was sent, Lu Yuanxi was silent. Only Chu Zhixing sent 5 words. Then give him more gifts? Bae Yunj had no other choice. She rummaged through the house, but she didn't find any Christmas gifts. However, she had changed into a little red dress that the man had bought from somewhere last time. It was considered a little more festive. However, she really couldn't find too many gifts, so Bae Yunj decided to use the gifts that she had originally given Mo to make up the numbers. A few minutes later, Bae Yunj carried a pile of gift boxes and pushed open the man's bedroom door. The style of the man's bedroom was cold, black, white and gray, ascetic and cold. The only place where she could store her surprise was the small wardrobe. However, when Bae Yunj opened the wardrobe door, she found that the wardrobe was divided into 2 layers. On the lower level, there were men's suits. The upper level was empty. Bae Yunj looked at the wardrobe that was almost taller than her. 3 minutes later, Bae Yunj sat on the upper floor of the wardrobe and found a box that looked very familiar. It seemed like it belonged to her. Bae Yunj opened the box and found that it contained the cat ear headband that Lu Yuanxi had given her last time. This D*MN man had actually kept it. Bae Yunj adjusted her emotions and was about to arrange the gifts when she suddenly thought of something. End of this chapter. Chapter 999. Her eyes flickered and her gaze landed on the cat ear headband. She licked her lips and the corners of her lips curled up slightly. Bae Yunj picked up the cat ear headband, touched the furry cat ears, and put it on her head first. Then, she continued to lay out the gifts. However, unexpectedly, just as Bae Yunj was halfway through, she suddenly heard a commotion outside the door. She paused. She did not expect Huashida's meeting to end so quickly. When she came back to her senses, Bae Yunj simply closed the wardrobe door. She planned to leave quietly after the man left. At this moment, Huashidu pushed the door open and entered. He had indeed come in to take something. He also noticed that the lights in the bedroom seemed to have been switched on. However, the man only glanced over indifferently and took out the bracelet he had bought for Bae Yunj in our nation. However, just as Huashidu was about to turn around and leave with the bracelet gift box, the system bell suddenly rang in the wardrobe. The man stopped in his tracks. Bae Yunja's eyelids twitched in the wardrobe. She slowly lowered her head to look at the phone beside her. Lu Yuanxi could have called at any other time. Why did he have to call at this time? Bae Yunj had a bad feeling and her breathing became lighter. But at the same time, the man's lips curled up lazily and he walked towards the wardrobe. Finally, he stopped in front of Bae Yunj. Just as Bae Yunj was about to move, a ray of light shone directly into her eyes from the gap in the wardrobe door. Bae Yunja's eyelashes fluttered subconsciously. She looked up and met the man's eyes. The man had almost sensed that Bae Yunj should be hiding here. He did not know what she was doing. However, the moment the door opened and he saw the girl's appearance clearly, The man's eyes darkened. It was so dark that it seemed to be able to hide all the light and devour everything. The girl in front of him had slightly curly black hair and was dressed in a seductive red dress. Under the light, her slender and fair legs made one's blood boil. Especially when the little girl had 2 cat ears on her head. It made the man's dark eyes unable to hide his lust. The atmosphere was silent for a few seconds. Bei Yunj licked her red lips and adjusted her sitting posture slightly. Her slender and beautiful white legs dangled, and she was not as casual as before. She placed her hands on the edge of the floor and thought for a while. She didn't notice that her shoulder strap had slipped. "Brother, do you like elk?" Bei Yunj saw that the man was staring at her. She wanted to take out the little elk she had prepared for Mo to ease the awkward atmosphere. However, in the next second, the man opened the gift box slowly with his well-defined hands and said casually, "I don't like it." Bei Yunj. How could he continue coaxing her? Suddenly, the man's voice was languid and seductive as he said lightly, "Big brother likes little wild cats more." Before Bei Yunj could react, Bei Yunj felt a little cold touch on her ankle. She instinctively lowered her head. It was originally a bracelet for Bei Yunj, but now it looked better as an ankle bracelet. Especially the little girl's slender ankles. The darkness in the man's eyes disappeared in a flash. Bei Yunj looked at the man's lowered eyes. His handsome and noble eyes were serious. However, at this moment, the man was only putting on an ankle bracelet for her. Her heart inexplicably skipped a beat. After fastening it, the man looked up and Bei Yunj's eyes met his dark and unreadable eyes. In addition to some special and burning emotions, there seemed to be some kind of desire. End of chapter. Chapter 1000. Bei Yunj sat in the closet and looked at the man's appearance from this angle. For some reason her heart itched. The corners of her lips curled up, and she tucked her black hair behind her ear. She bent down gently and said in a teasing tone, "Brother, the gift you gave me is only a chain?" Sensing the young girl's fragrance approaching, the man's lazy eyes still looked refined and lazy, but there was a darkness in his eyes. "No, that's too petty." The young lady was obviously going to torture Hoshiru. Her eyes curved and she looked even more seductive. "I have to find other gifts." At this moment, Bei Yunj bent down and wanted to touch the man's pocket. The man did not stop the young lady from being presumptuous. In the bedroom, the gentle light shone on the man's side profile, making him look lazy and ostentatious. His smooth eyebrows were raised, but the aggression in his eyes did not decrease. The man looked up, and Bei Yunj met the man's dark eyes at a close distance. The emotions that were usually suppressed deep down were now ostentatious and straightforward. Bei Yunj's heart was in a mess for some reason. She almost fell from her seat, but the man supported her back with one hand. "Bei Yunj." Bei Yunj was silent for a moment. She sensed that the atmosphere was not right and instinctively wanted to straighten up. But then the man quickly grabbed the back of her neck. His warm fingers caressed her flirtatiously, making her feel numb in her bones and her legs go weak. In this position, Bei Yunj subconsciously noticed the man's light red thin lips. They were so close that it was too flirtatious. But she did not dare to move. The man slowly reached out and straightened the pair of furry cat ears on her head. "Aren't you going to continue searching?" Bei Yunj heard the man chuckle softly. It was the kind of voice that made his throat tremble with joy. It was so deep that it made one's face burn. The next moment, Hoshida glanced at the young lady and gently pressed the switch on the wall. The floor that Bei Yunj was sitting on started to descend. Bei Yunj realized that it could be lowered automatically. Bei Yunj. She had been careless. Not long after, Bei Yunj looked up and saw the man looking at her with a faint smile. There was a hint of teasing in his eyes. It was as if he was certain that she would not make a move. Suddenly, Bei Yunj's knees were half straightened and she reached her hand into the man's suit pocket. The man also felt the little girl's soft and boneless hand on his leg. The little girl's furry cat ears were rubbing against his well-defined jaw. "Brother, did you really hide other gifts?" Bei Yunj had just raised her chin when the man suddenly reached out and grabbed Bei Yunj's waist, carrying her down with one hand. The little girl's subconscious action of hooking her arms around the man's neck made him feel much better. He licked the tip of his teeth and asked in amusement, Pei Yunj, are you going to touch wherever I ask you to? Being alone with a man and a woman, this little girl was not afraid of causing trouble at all. Pei Yunj. Why did her words sound so vulgar? Hoshiru had just placed her on the bed. But in the next second, Pei Yunj pushed him away and got off the bed. Merry Christmas ended here. But right after that, the man scooped her up and gently restrained her hands from behind. His chin gently rubbed against the hollow of her neck. He laughed softly and coaxed her. Why are you angry? Didn't you say that you wanted to give brother a gift? Pei Yunj was expressionless. You said that I was despicable. No. The man slowly refused to admit it. Chapter 1001. Pei Yunj was about to turn her head when her gaze landed on the full-length mirror, not far away from the man. The next moment, the man's deep and magnetic voice was filled with sexy and lazy laughter as he whispered into her ear. Yes, it's mainly because brother wants to be lewd. Before Pei Yunj could react, she saw the man's lips curl up in the mirror. Then, the man suddenly bent down and nibbled on her cat ears. The way he nibbled on her ears made her blush and her heart beat faster. His eyes stared straight at her. Pei Yunj froze. The man's flirtatious and ambiguous low laughter made her ears turn red and hot. She was so grateful that her entire body went soft. Where's our Union's little tail? Pei Yunj's heart beat wildly for some reason. She did not dare to look into the man's eyes. She did not notice that there was a faint pink on her snow-white skin. At this moment, the way the man in front of her smiled was simply the epitome of a refined scum. The next day, Miss, what happened to your foot? Aunt Meow exclaimed. Pei Yunj. The man who had just come downstairs smirked and said naturally, I bumped into something. Aunt Meow, prepare a few more bottles of Dieta wine at home next time. Hoshida glanced at her slowly and said with a smile, I'll prepare it. Pei Yunj. Last night, she had been flirted with by the man until she was dizzy. When she ran away at the last minute, she accidentally bumped into the cabinet. When the private doctor came, he even reminded Pei Yunj that young people had to restrain themselves. It was not safe to have a too exciting experience. Thinking of this, Pei Yunj glanced at Hoshiru with an unfriendly gaze. However, the man smiled silently and walked to Pei Yunj's side to sit down. Union gave brother a present last night. Brother likes it very much. For a moment, Pei Yunj did not know if the present Hoshiru was talking about was the one she had placed in the closet or something else. Then Pei Yunj heard a certain someone say gently, if there's a tail, brother will like it even more. Pei Yunj. Was this dog man like this during the day as well? Seeing that Pei Yunj didn't want to talk to him, the man just lowered his head and laughed. He put one hand on the back of her chair and gently stuffed something into her pocket with his slender fingers. There was a gift last night, but I forgot to give it to our Union. Hoshidu reached out and scratched the little girl's chin. Pei Yunj heard him say, the key you threw on the table last time was to a laboratory next to the Computing Institute. Laboratory? Pei Yunj's eyes flickered. She looked up at Hoshidu and subconsciously took out the key. Why would he think of sending her to the lab? Last time, Elder Zhong told me that you are also very interested in research. Pei Yunj. So you're giving me the lab? If she was purely interested, wasn't Hoshidu burning money? He reached out and gently pinched Pei Yunj's face. He said regretfully, yes, brother also asked Mr. Zhong if he could sell the Computing Institute to me. Unfortunately, he didn't agree. Pei Yunj. He still wanted to buy her a Computing Institute? But at this moment, Pei Yunj's thoughts were not on this. Otherwise, she would have realized that something was wrong. She had been thinking since last night about why Hoshiru had been abroad all these years. Brother, are you going on a business trip this month? Pei Yunj suddenly asked. Hoshida's pale eyes glanced at her. Are you chasing me away? End of this chapter. Chapter 1002. No. Pei Yunj looked at him. Don't you have to go out every year at this time of the year? The man's eyes dimmed and he smiled. I'm going out for a few days. I'll be back soon. Pei Yunj thought for a while and said, actually, I can go with you. The man's peach blossom eyes curved when he heard this. His light-colored eyes were flirtatious and seductive. He reached out and scratched the girl's chin. I'll take you there when you recover. At the Psychological Research Institute, Cui Hengchuan noticed the bandage on Bei Yunji's leg as soon as he entered. Are you injured? Bei Yunji answered without hesitation, yes. Bei Yunji didn't notice any of this. Cui Hengchuan's lips curled up imperceptibly. He walked to the water dispenser and poured a glass of water for Bei Yunji. Then Bei Yunji instinctively took the water from Cui Hengchuan, and she paused. She realized that she didn't seem to be too guarded against Cui Hengchuan. Actually, Bei Yunji didn't like Cui Hengchuan all this time. But she didn't know when she started to have a good impression of Cui Hengchuan. It was a good impression of a friend. Be careful when you walk next time. Cui Hengchuan sat in front of the table. He looked gentle and harmless. Bei Yunji's eyes dimmed, and she put the glass on the table. She tapped the chair handle with her fingertips. Dr. Cui, we've done hypnosis 5 times since I first entered this institute. That's right. Cui Hengchuan's eyes flashed and he looked up with a smile. Considering Miss Pei's personal situation, the frequency is too high. Was Dr. Cui the only one who did the hypnosis? Cui Hengchuan said. There was also my assistant and Dr. Huang, Mr. Zhong's high school classmate. He hid the emotions in his eyes and asked gently, what's wrong? Nothing. Did Dr. Huang come today? Bei Yunji asked. No, Cui Hengchuan said. Bei Yunji nodded. Then make an appointment next time. I have something on today. After that, Bei Yunji left unhurriedly. Cui Hengchuan looked at Bei Yunji's back and couldn't help but smile. Master, why did you choose her? Jiangji walked out from the back and looked at Bei Yunji's departing figure. She felt depressed. Cui Hengchuan lit a cigarette. The cigarette but was red for a moment. He slowly blew out a smoke ring and said with a faint smile, because I really want her. Jiangji subconsciously clenched her fists. She had sensed that Cui Hengchuan was interested in Bei Yunji when he raced with Bei Yunji in the store. But she seems to have sensed something. Cui Hengchuan didn't care, and opened the medical record book. It's okay. Even if she wants to change people, they will be my people. For example, old Master Zhong's old classmate, Dr. Huang. He clearly saw how he hypnotized Bei Yunji, and injected the drug into Bei Yunji. However, he was very tight-lipped and knew whose side he was on. But she's too smart. She even sensed her own emotions. This was something Cui Hengchuan didn't expect. If it were anyone else, it would be impossible for them to sense it after just 4 injections. Jiangji's eyes lit up. Yes, master. This is too risky. What's more, Country A values her so much. Ask them to send the 7 experimental drug this week. Cui Hengchuan curled his lips. I'm looking forward to seeing how she falls in love with me. End of chapter. Chapter 1003. Jiangji pursed her lips, her expression a little ugly. She did not expect Cui Hengchuan to be so determined to get Bei Yunji. At the Computing Institute. What's wrong? Soon, Shang Yin picked up the call. His gentle voice was clear and pleasant. Get me a reliable psychiatrist. Bei Yunji adjusted the white coat she had put on slowly. Shang Yin, who was in Country R, paused. What happened? Bei Yunji told Shang Yin about her. You think this is abnormal because you don't dislike him anymore? Bei Yunji frowned. Isn't this abnormal enough? Shang Yin suppressed his smile. All right, I'll be satisfied with a doctor you're satisfied with to take care of you. Don't arrange for him to come over directly. Let him use his connections at the research institute. Bei Yunji licked her lips, her eyes unreadable. I don't want to alert him yet. If it weren't for the drug allergy, she would have almost forgotten that the original owner had many allergens. But most importantly, the original owner was allergic to most hallucinogenic drugs like her. At the same time, this reminded her that her feelings for Cui Hengchuan were indeed abnormal. So what was Cui Hengchuan trying to do? Suddenly, I heard that there's a psychological laboratory in Continent K that often does experiments on mental control of humans. It seems that someone is researching some kind of mental medicine this year. Shang Yin also thought about this. What's the name of your attending doctor? Cui Hengchuan. I'll arrange for someone to investigate. Shang Yan was silent for a moment. If you're right, this matter won't be easy to resolve. Bei Yunj smiled, but there was no warmth in her eyes. After living for so many years, someone really dared to experiment on her. A few days passed. Bei Yunj had just left the research lab when she received a call. After hanging up, she turned around and heard Si Qingyan ask casually, "Master Pei, what happened?" Bei Yunj glanced at him. "Let me go back to school." "What's there to go back to? Don't waste any more time at this critical juncture," Si Qingyan said nonchalantly. "No, we have to see how our little Chu and little Lu are doing." Pei Yunj was in a good mood as the corners of her lips curled up. Si Qingyan was speechless. Why was she still worried about being a father? Hengda High School. After Pei Yunj entered, she walked straight to the office. The door was half closed, but the voices inside could be heard clearly. "Regarding the joint examination of the 9 schools, as class teachers, you must urge the students not to lose a single point that they should get. Do you hear me?" The principal continued. "In the last mock exam, Yunqing First High School scored a historic 0. 12 points higher than us. Don't you feel threatened?" Someone whispered, "Principal, there's no need to be so nervous about such a small score." "There's no need to be so nervous." The principal's voice became even louder. In the last comprehensive test, the number 1 middle school next door scored the highest in the city. The highest score isn't in our school, and the average score can't be compared to number 1 middle school. What do you class teachers care about? "Principal, our school can get the highest score this time," Teacher Wen suddenly interjected. At the same time, Bei Yunj happened to push the door open and enter. "Reporting Teacher Wen, I'm back." The next moment, everyone's attention landed on the person at the door. After not seeing her for a few months, the girl's beautiful eyes were still carefree and high-spirited. End of chapter. Chapter 1004. But then, the atmosphere was silent for a long time. The principal turned to look at Teacher Wen expressionlessly. "Old one, are you crazy or am I crazy? Why did you ask Bei Yunj to come back at this time?" Bei Yunj looked up at him. Question mark. The principal continued. "Are you a spy from the number 1 high school next door? Do you think the average score isn't low enough?" Bei Yunj was speechless. "Didn't I ask Ge, or to come back to win glory for our school?" Teacher Wen clarified. When the principal heard this, he was so angry that he pointed at Teacher Wen for a long time, speechless. How many months had it been since Bei Yunj went to class? He was still counting on Bei Yunj to turn the tide. "Bei Yunj, go home and stay," the principal turned and said. Unexpectedly, Bei Yunj said slowly, "I'm here to take the joint examination." In an instant, the form teachers were silent. How could this teacher and student be so stubborn? Why did they have to go against the principal? The form teacher of class 7 sneered. "It seems that Teacher Wen is very confident in his student. Principal, give her a chance. What if she can get first place in the 9 schools?" With that said, everyone knew that the form teacher of class 7 wanted to bring up old scores. After all, in the past few months, Leia's scores had improved by leaps and bounds. Leia also got first place in the previous mock exam. And the form teacher of class 7 had always hated Bei Yunj. Everyone knew that. This time, it was a good opportunity for her to slap her in the face. "You." The principal looked at the form teacher of class 7 and frowned. But then Bei Yunj asked, "When is the exam?" 2 days later, Teacher Wen said. The principal's face turned green when he heard them echoing each other. "Then I'll stay in school for 2 days and go back after the exam." With that, Bei Yunj turned around and waved. "Goodbye, teachers." The form teachers were speechless. They hadn't seen this guy for a few months, but he was still as wild as ever. Year 3 Class 1. It's over. Our school's average score can't be compared to the number 1 middle school next door. We'll probably have to add another hour to the evening self-study session. The students in the class leaned back in their chairs dejectedly. "Then we'll have to work at least 2 more hours, another person muttered. Didn't their class always drag them down when it came to the average grade? Number 1 high school is too strong now. What can we do? The first place in our grade can only be ranked 3rd in their school." Immediately after, Someone said sneakily. Who do you think will get first place in the joint examination of the 9 schools this time? I bet on Johan from number 1 middle school. It might be Leia too. Her points have been increasing at a terrifying rate recently. It's also possible for Song Yao from number 1 high school. She's only 2 points lower than Zhou. Everyone was talking about it. Suddenly, when someone saw the figure at the door, his eyes lit up and he exclaimed, Master Pei? Are you stupid? Master Pei isn't even back yet, and he's still in first place. After saying that, the boy reached out and slapped his deskmate. But suddenly, Chu Zhixing stood up. Master Pei. At this moment, everyone realized that something was wrong. When they looked at the door, they saw a girl wearing a loose sweater with a red and white knitted design. Her black hair was loose and she was so beautiful that people couldn't come back to their senses. Why are you back? Chu Zhixing was a little incoherent, his eyes filled with joy. I'm here to attend classes for 2 days and get first place for Hengda. Her tone was slow, but no one dared to forget this person's terrifying operation. After all, she was a big shot who could still be in the top 3 of the grade even if she gave up on the exam. End of chapter. Chapter 1005. The people in Class 1 felt proud and couldn't help but be excited. There's going to be a good show this time. It's a fight between immortals. What do you mean by immortals fighting? Another round-faced girl bit the cap of her pen and looked at Bei Yunja's lazy side profile. She couldn't help but feel pink bubbles in her heart. Master Pei is back. This is called the gods giving way. Lu Yuanxi, who heard from behind, was speechless. Wasn't Bei Yunja's affinity with the same sex ridiculously good? Master Pei, you're giving number 1 high school too much face. That's right. If you come to the exam personally, you'll scare the babies in number 1 high school. The 2 boys giggled and echoed each other, as if they were performing a crosstalk. Then someone started to imitate a baby's cry. It wasn't until Bei Yunja's faint gaze swept over them that they calmed down. Very good. Master Pei was still that Master Pei. He didn't say a word, but he was oppressive. I have friends in number 1 high school. Don't cause trouble, Bei Yunj said leisurely. The boys nodded like they were pecking at rice. They were still smiling mischievously. It was obvious that they were familiar with Bei Yunja's temper, but they didn't dare to say anything. At the corner of the door, Leia's back was facing the wall. When Leia heard that Bei Yunj was back, she couldn't help but come to take a look. However, when she heard what Class 1 said, a hint of mockery appeared in her eyes. Class 1 was really a motley crew. Did they think that the joint examination of the 9 schools was that simple? Bei Yunja's attitude of not taking the college entrance examination seriously would cause her to fall into a huge pit sooner or later. For example, the joint examination in 2 days' time. The corners of Leia's mouth curled up. She couldn't help but leave briskly. Number 1 high school. What? Hengda still has a seated contestant? The teachers of number 1 high school were also investigating the enemy. I heard that there's someone called Bei Yunj in Hengda's grade 12 class 1. He previously got 3rd place in the cohort. Hearing this, a teacher chuckled. 3rd place in the cohort is nothing. What's so strange? When he abandoned the math exam, he got 3rd place in the cohort. As soon as he finished speaking, the venue fell into dead silence. He could get 3rd place in the cohort after abandoning the math exam. Director, it's the mock exam that Hengda and us organized in the 2nd year of high school. That person's voice became softer and softer. Out of the 2 schools, the only one who scored full marks in the comprehensive science exam is her. At this time, everyone started to feel their scalps go numb, because they clearly remembered that the exam questions were very difficult. The highest score in their school was 249. But Hengda had someone who scored full marks in science. Ms. Li, don't think too much about it. I also heard from Hengda that Bei Yunj hasn't been to school for a few months. She doesn't take her grades seriously at all. Another teacher smiled and said, the teachers in her school don't think that she can get 1st place. What are you nervous about? But this is really a dark horse. Why are you panicking? Johan's grades in our school are so stable. Is there anyone who can do better than him? The teachers of the two schools had different thoughts. They were all waiting for the joint examination of the 9 schools. After school, the students of Hongda saw the school bell, Song Yao, standing at their school gate. Initially, he was still wondering who was the one who had hooked up with the school bell next door. He did not expect to see Bei Yunj greeting Song Yao. The boys in the same class were already whistling. Master Pei, you even got the school bell next door. Bei Yunj was speechless. Song Yao walked over and stared at her. You have to treat me to ice cream. Bei Yunj touched the tip of her nose. Song Yao Yao, it's winter. End of chapter. Chapter 1006. Who asked you to say that you didn't come for the exam? You're a liar. Song Yao held Bei Yunj's hand and went to the ice cream shop next door. No, we can only drink milk tea. Bei Yunj hugged her shoulders and turned Song Yao to the milk tea shop. Looking at Song Yao's gentle and pretty eyes, she unconsciously supported her head with her hand and looked at her. What are you looking at? Song Yao also wanted to question Bei Yunj confidently, but looking at Bei Yunj's lazy smile, her eyes inexplicably drifted away. Song Yao Yao, you're too fierce. She smiled and reached out to search Song Yao's head. Bei Yunj had only agreed to come to the 9 schools joint examination after receiving a call. Song Yao glared at her and took the milk tea Bei Yunj handed her. Did the teacher ask you to come back? Bei Yunj leaned against the glass wall lazily and drank milk tea. But suddenly, she heard a sound at the door. What's so good about Hongda now? Our school has the highest average score and the highest score. With that said, Bei Yunj and Song Yao looked up at the door at the same time. Are they your juniors? Bei Yunj went up to Song Yao and asked. Song Yao's eyes were gentle, but they were still indifferent. I don't know them. Then, the two small groups at the door started to argue. Didn't number 1 high school do well this time? Do you really think you're so important after surpassing them once? The tone of the students from number 1 high school became even more mocking. Surpassing them once? I think other than Cheng Zihuai, who has already left, there's only a bunch of trash left in Hongda. These words made Song Yao frown and she looked at the boy coldly. What questions do you not know today? Show me. Bei Yunj did not care much about the argument outside. Instead, he asked Song Yao to take out the exercises, and the two of them studied quietly in the milk tea shop. However, the two groups of people outside were already scratching their heads and scratching their faces as they started fighting. Bei Yunj looked up and lowered his head to study the questions. He looked quite interested. The only thing missing was a plate of melon seeds on the table. Song Yao said, Yunj, let's go. Ah, okay. Bei Yunj responded and packed her things with Song Yao, preparing to leave. But what he didn't expect was, before Bei Yunj could leave, they were taken away by Hongda's Dean of Teaching as troublemakers. Hongda's student office. Both teams had injuries on their faces. Only Bei Yunj and Song Yao stood at the side. You're rebelling. The joint examination of the 9 schools is in 2 days, and you dare to fight at the gate now. Since you guys are so capable, why don't you compare the results of the joint examination? The students from both teams didn't look too good. Suddenly, a student from number 1 middle school said, Director, we're not Hongda's students. We want to go back. Did I tell you not to go back? The head of teaching sneered. Wait for your school's teachers to come and pick him up. After that, the dean scolded them one by one. But unexpectedly, the last one was Bei Yunj. You're also blindly getting involved? The teaching director was furious. This Bei Yunj did not do anything good usually. She was always on the list of bad people. I'm passing by. Bei Yunj glanced at his watch. Teacher, she's tutoring me, Song Yao explained. But when the dean heard this, he chuckled. You're Song Yao from number 1 middle school, right? Song Yao nodded. Yes. You asked her to tutor you? The dean's words were filled with distrust. How could he not know Bei Yunj's capabilities? End of chapter. Chapter 1007. How could Bei Yunj tutor the second grader in number 1 high school? Did she think everyone was a fool? Soon, several teachers from number 1 high school also came to collect their students. When they saw these students causing trouble, Their expressions did not look good. Dean, our students from number 1 high school have caused trouble for Hongda. The vice principal of number 1 high school smiled. Hongda's students are definitely at fault in this matter. Not only that, but it also involved our third-year high school students. The dean was very polite to the vice principal of number 1 high school, almost flattering him. This puzzled the students of Hongda. Year 3. The vice principal of number 1 high school glanced at some people and said mockingly, "You're not studying in year 3 and are fighting with year 1 and year 2 students? No wonder Hongda's enrollment rate is so worrying." These words angered the students of Hongda so much that their expressions turned ugly. However, the dean still smiled apologetically. "You're right. Old Lu, can I take my students away first?" Seeing that someone was supporting him, the vice principal felt better. Director Lu continued, "Of course." At this moment, the vice principal glanced at the others with some disdain. "I'm also looking forward to the results of your Year 3 and Year 2 students in the joint examination of the 9 schools this time. Let's see if your confidence is because of your ability." Hearing these insulting words, the other students were suppressed and did not dare to speak. Their hearts were burning with anger. But suddenly, the girl's lazy and clear voice sounded slowly. "Vice Principal, you're too polite. After all, our Hongda is a century-old school. There are many top scorers in the college entrance examination. Why would we care about the results once or twice?" These words made the students of Hongda look at Bei Yunj in admiration. She was indeed an influential figure in Hongda. Senior Pei was amazing. Bei Yunj. Director Lu's expression changed. Song Yao, who was beside him, also knew that if she wasn't in number 1 high school, Bei Yunj's words wouldn't have been so nice. "You're Bei Yunj?" When the vice principal heard this familiar name, he asked in an unfriendly tone. Bei Yunj glanced at him lazily, having no intention of replying to him. This made the vice principal's expression darken. He had been in number 1 middle school for so many years. Who dared to give him attitude? "Lu Ginghui, the students of your school are very courageous." The vice principal flew into a rage. Vice principal, Bei Yunj is like this. She treats everyone like this. Director Lu had been secretly currying favor with the leaders of number 1 middle school, and wanted to transfer to number 1 middle school. Of course, he did not want his career to be ruined because of Hongda's students. Suddenly, a voice came from the door. "Principal, the directors of your school are quite unique. They don't protect their own students externally, but they are united internally?" Everyone turned around and saw the principal of Hongda walking in with a handsome young man. "Professor C has a good eye." The principal's gaze was so dark that Director Lu did not dare to look him in the eye. The person beside her was Si Qingyan. Principal, Director Lu immediately stuttered. He did not know if the principal had seen him fawning over the vice principal of number 1 high school. Bei Yunj was the one who disrespected the teachers. I also saw that after she came back from her leave, her behavior became even more unreasonable, so Director Lu, are you saying that our computing institute taught bad people? Si Qingyan asked with a smile, but the coldness in his eyes did not diminish. What? Not only Director Lu, even the principal of Hongda, and the vice principal of number 1 high school looked at him instinctively. Chapter 1008. Since when did Bei Yunj have anything to do with the Computing Institute? As the top computing institute in the country, the Computing Institute had extremely high requirements for recruitment. Bei Yunj was only a high school student. How was this possible? Bei Yunj also gave Si Qingyan an intriguing look. Si Qingyan was speechless. Was this girl even human? He was protecting her here, and she was threatening him? Our old master likes student pay. It's not strange for him to make an exception in the future. Si Qingyan said slowly. Oh right. Everyone should know that our computing institute has always had a recommendation slot for a university. Instantly, everyone remembered. As the top computing institute in the country, the Computing Institute had signed a cooperation agreement with Yincheng University. Every year, they could send a student to study in the computing department of Yin University. Not to mention Bei Yunj's results, Even if Bei Yunj did not take the college entrance examination, she could successfully enter Yin University through the cooperation mechanism of the Computing Institute. Hearing this, the expression of the vice principal of First High School changed. Back then, his nephew also wanted to enter the Computing Institute, but he was eliminated in the preliminary round. But now a Year 3 student from Hongda actually had a chance to enter the Computing Institute. This Yunj didn't tell us about this, the principal said with a smile. If Hongda's students could enter the Computing Institute, they would have a golden reputation in the future. The vice principal of First High School beside him was so jealous that his face was about to contort. Si Qingyan chuckled and could not help but take revenge. What's there to say about her? She only stayed in the institute for a few days before she went out to play. His tone was sour. Isn't she just relying on the fact that the old master dotes on her? Bei Yunj was speechless. The principal of Hongda's smile froze. So she hasn't revised her high school homework either? Is she someone who does such a thing? Si Qingyan asked. The principal's expression was a little broken. Instantly, everyone fell silent. What kind of F***king favorite was this? Were all the big shots paving the way for her? At this moment, the students of First High School were completely dumbfounded, and their expressions froze. Professor C, we have no intention of arguing with the students. The vice principal knew Si Qingyan's identity and did not dare to offend him. Si Qingyan glanced at him and smiled faintly. It's best if that's the case. It's not up to others to criticize the people in our Computing Institute. After saying this, the atmosphere grew colder and colder. Not only was Si Qingyan a core member of the Computing Institute, but he was also the youngest computer science professor at Yin University. You're right. The vice principal smiled stiffly. Originally, when he came to Hongda, he didn't plan to give the school leaders any face. However, she did not expect to meet Si Qingyan halfway. After Bei Yunj and the other man left, Song Yao returned halfway. At this moment, the vice principal then realized that Song Yao was there too. Song Yao, were you there just now? Song Yao glanced at the vice principal and said in a pleasant voice, But then, before the vice principal could speak, Song Yao suddenly walked in front of a boy. It was the boy who said that the students of Hongda were all trash at the entrance of the milk tea shop. Song Yao's smiling eyes were still reserved and gentle. She said gently, Do you think you're not a good for nothing? Instantly, the boy's expression was ugly. The vice principal also warned, Song Yao, I have something on the day after tomorrow. I'll apply for leave and give up the exam, Song Yao said calmly. Song Yao, what do you mean? Are you going against the school? Chapter 1009. Vice Principal, don't you know why our mock exam scores are higher than Hongda's? The moment Song Yao finished speaking, the vice principal's expression changed. Song Yao, shut up. The vice principal was furious when he saw Song Yao. That time, they had won Hongda's mock exam, because the teacher who came up with the questions happened to be related to the vice principal. Without the students knowing, the teachers had arranged similar questions for the students of their school. As a result, the average score of that question was much higher than Hongda's. However, Song Yao was the only one who refused to listen. She simply left that question blank and went against the school openly. Otherwise, with Song Yao's results, she would be a few points higher than the first place. Song Yao smiled and said, Vice Principal, you can't cheat in the college entrance examination. With that said, Song Yao turned and left. The vice principal gritted his teeth, but there was nothing he could do to Song Yao. Indeed, one could not cheat in the college entrance examination. Therefore, First High School still had to rely on Song Yao to get high marks. The next day, the students of Hongda saw a notice. The dean of Year 3, Lu Ginghui, was suspended. Currently, the principal was in charge of supervising the Year 3 students. Class 1. Master Pei, oh God, I heard that you brought a few Year 2 and Year 1 boys to fight with the students from First High School next door? Someone said excitedly. Aya, can't you find your brothers in your class for such things in the future? They'll definitely be better than our juniors. Bei Yunj did not expect this matter to become more and more ridiculous. However, she still smiled lazily. Sure, I'll organize a gathering next time. Lu Yuanxi was speechless. Chu Zhixing was speechless. Bei Yunj, your examination hall information. Lu Yuanxi glanced at her and gave her the examination hall information. Bei Yunj glanced at it and asked, "Where's examination hall 29? Lu Yuanxi paused. First high school. Bei Yunj was speechless. Some things came easily. On the day of the exam, Bei Yunj took the school bus to First High School. Only then did she know that only 2 students from Hongda had been selected to go to First High School. Coincidentally, Bei Yunj was one of them. The other student was a girl. She looked very introverted and did not dare to look up at Bei Yunj the entire time. Until they got out of the car. Bei Yunj raised her eyebrows when she saw the school leaders who were attending to her. Vice Principal, good morning. Bei Yunj was all smiles. However, when the vice principal of number 1 middle school saw Bei Yunj, he almost couldn't smile. You're taking the exam in number 1 middle school? Yes. Bei Yunj nodded and walked inside. The vice principal stared at Bei Yunj gloomily and felt inexplicably uneasy. Principal Huang, this student doesn't look like a good student, the dean of First High School said. The vice principal sneered. This student has a solid foundation of connections. By the way, tell the teachers in Bei Yunj to keep an eye on her. Yesterday in Hongda, he also noticed the attitude of the principal of Hongda towards Bei Yunj. He reckoned that Bei Yunj would be nothing more than cannon fodder when she returned for the exam. She would not be a threat to them. However, the vice principal was furious at the thought that Song Yao dared to abandon the exam. Fortunately, Zhou Han was around. Besides, Qin Youjiao, who they had always thought of as the biggest threat, did not come back for the exam. The vice principal heaved a sigh of relief. Hongda had no chance to make a comeback in this joint examination of the 9 schools. Examination Hall 29. The moment Bei Yunj entered, many people were staring at her. Some people even recognized Bei Yunj. Why was she assigned to this examination hall? Someone asked with a smile. P.S. We'll continue tomorrow. Thank you for your monthly recommendation. Chapter 10:10. The seats in the examination hall of number 1 high school had always been arranged according to results. In this joint examination of the 9 schools, other than the students from other schools, there was not much difference in the order of everyone. Therefore, when Bei Yunj suddenly appeared in the second-to-last examination hall, everyone looked at him meaningfully. The exam is about to start. Is there anyone who hasn't sat down? As soon as the teacher from number 1 high school came in, he glanced at Bei Yunj indifferently. Bei Yunj didn't care too much. After sitting in his seat, he skillfully took off his scarf and folded it into a square to sleep. The teacher's face twitched. Start handing out the papers. After the teacher passed the papers down, his tone was slightly mocking. This is number 1 high school. I don't want messy students to bring bad atmosphere to our school. Students from number 1 high school should also remember that the students from some schools are from a different world from you. Bei Yunj was the only one from another school. Everyone knew who the teacher was talking about. Many students in the examination hall looked at Bei Yunj with eager eyes and were hostile to the students from Hongda. However, about 10 minutes after the papers were handed out, everyone suddenly heard the sound of the papers being flipped. The students from number 1 high school slowly turned their heads. They didn't expect that the first person to flip the papers would be Bei Yunj. Was he doing it blindly? How could he write so fast? At this moment, all the students thought so, including the invigilator. However, the sound of Bei Yunj's pen scribbling on the papers was particularly alarming. Not only that, a few minutes later, everyone heard Bei Yunj's annoying tone and smiled lazily. It's so easy. Why did our Hongda teacher answer all these questions? Wasn't this person immoral? The students from number 1 high school looked at this ridiculously difficult paper and suddenly felt self-doubt. Their mentality was broken by Bei Yunj. Who told you to speak in the examination hall and affect others? The teacher from number 1 high school was so angry that his face was distorted. Bei Yunj said in a sincere tone, I'm sorry, teacher. I thought everyone had finished. After saying that, Bae Yunj suddenly stood up and said slowly, Teacher, I'm handing in my paper. The expressions of the number 1 high school students were about to crack. She handed in her paper in less than 20 minutes. Bae Yunj didn't like this kind of exam. To her, this was like asking a high school student to do first-grade questions. It's not time yet. Who told you to hand in your paper in advance? The teacher from number 1 high school said immediately. Then what should I do? I have bad habits since I was young, and I like to talk to myself. Bae Yunj glanced at everyone present with a smile. The students from No. 1 high school suddenly had a bad feeling about this. For the first time, they wanted to shout for help because of a person's gaze. Go lie on the table and sleep. You're not allowed to speak. The invigilator's face was ashen, and he was so angry that he almost blacked out. What kind of students did Hongda recruit? Wouldn't this kind of student blow up the school? However, although Bae Yunj was seriously sleeping, the people around her were more or less having a mental breakdown as they looked at her. So much so that after the exam, no one present had a pleasant expression. She must have been sent by Hongda to mess with them, right? After 2 days, all the exams were over. The students in the examination hall 29 also heaved a sigh of relief. They finally didn't have to see this god of plague from Hongda anymore. This is the real god of plague. She didn't do well in the exam, and even caused the entire examination hall to have a mental breakdown. End of this chapter. Chapter 10-11. The students from number 1 high school were furious and gritted their teeth in hatred. You don't say. Do you know who Hongda's Bae Yunj is on good terms with? Song Yao. Another girl sneered as she ground her nails. I don't know if it was discussed, but Song Yao didn't come for the exam today. Ha, she's obviously an ingrate. Even if there's no Song Yao, there's still Johan. How can a bunch of useless people from Hongda compare to us? The students in the class mocked. Hongda. What's wrong with you? Bae Yunj, are you a humanoid missile? You'll blow up wherever you go. The principal looked at her in disbelief. You've been in number 1 high school for 2 days and number 1 high school has called our school more than in the past 2 years. Bae Yunj was speechless. Did you call me over to punish me or criticize me? Bae Yunj asked slowly. The principal took a deep breath and glared at Bae Yunj. Don't do it again. Bae Yunj looked at the principal in surprise and replied with a smile. Okay, then I'll leave school. Bae Yunj, even if you're talented, you can't afford to waste it. Find a tutor and make up for your high school knowledge. Bae Yunj continued to brush him off. Okay, principal. The principal was speechless. If this fellow stayed in school any longer, he would explode. However, after Bae Yunj left, the form teacher of year 3 hurried over. Principal, I've asked around. The mathematics results of the 2 examination halls are out. The highest score in our school is still Leia with 125 points. But Johan with 130 points. What? The principal was also stunned. The craftiness of this exam was already at its peak. Johan from number 1 high school actually scored so high. But principal, Leia is a contestant in the Physics World Championship. I heard that Leia's physics score is above 90. Johan only scored 82 points. The principal heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, there's still Leia. Then, the principal thought for a moment. However, their scores are too close. I wonder what the final result will be. On this day, the teachers of the 2 schools were studying the highest score in the first examination hall. The atmosphere was soul-stirring, but no one cared about the students in the other examination halls. So much so that the teachers marking the papers were bored to death. When they reached the last paper, they almost spat out their tea. What's the situation? The student in examination hall 29 solved the last question of physics. Teacher Chun was in charge of correcting the last 2 questions, but there were only a handful of people who got it right. There was not a single person who got it all right. The test paper in his hand was actually the first one that was completely correct. Teacher Chun came to his senses and flipped the paper forward. When the paper reached her hands, she was already at the last question. But this examinee actually got all the answers right. Was this world a fantasy? Before Mr. Chen could react, the voice of Mr. Zhang, who was marking the math papers, suddenly came from the door. Old Chen, did you see anything wrong with the physics paper in examination hall 29? Mr. Chen subconsciously pointed at the paper in his hand, his voice trembling unnaturally. This is a perfect score paper. Teacher Zhang walked in and asked tentatively, is it examinee number 27? Mr. Chen looked down. Yes. But when he reacted, he was shocked. How did you know? Mr. Chen looked up and met Teacher Zhang's eyes. He suddenly had a bad premonition. Examinee number 27 scored full marks for the mathematics paper. End of chapter. Chapter 10-12. The moment he finished speaking, the atmosphere was dead silent for a long time. This standard. She might be the top scholar of the college entrance examination this year. Let's go and talk to them. Teacher Chen walked out excitedly, but was pulled back by Teacher Zhang. Old Zhang, with your qualifications, you should be here to help Yun University check the papers, right? Teacher Chen glared at him. Aren't you here to understand the situation for Beichuan? In the past few years, the competition between the top universities in the country was still intense. Who didn't want to be the first to gain the upper hand? Actually, we have orders from above. This examinee's score. We can suppress it first. Teacher Zhang hugged Teacher Chen's shoulders and discussed. Let's find out about her results in other subjects from Beichuan and Yun University first. If she's really the top scholar, we'll compete fairly. How about that? Teacher Chen was stunned. Then the other universities. Old Chen, have you forgotten how many good seedlings were secretly stolen from your Yin University last year? The moment Teacher Zhang said this, Teacher Chen was furious. He reached out and slapped his head. You immoral people still have the cheek to say that? Isn't it Beichuan who did it the most? In the end, on the day the results of the joint examination of the 9 schools were released, Class 7. Leia was surrounded by many classmates with envious faces. Leia, I heard. Johan next door scored 5 points higher than you in mathematics, and you scored 8 points higher than him in physics. But in foreign languages, you scored 13 points higher than Johan. The classmate said excitedly. Johan was completely destroyed. Song Yao smirked and said humbly, this joint examination is too difficult. I might not even get 600 points. Come on. Every time you say you don't have 600 points, you end up with 700 points. It's really difficult this time. Song Yao looked helpless. However, when the teacher arrived, the highest score of Class 7 was announced. It was Leia. She had a total score of 641 points. And the second place in the first examination hall had a score of 5 points. Many people could not help but discuss fervently. Leia and Johan were fighting like gods. However, in this joint examination, if Leia could get nearly 650 points, Johan would probably have to settle for second place. After the second period ended, Leia was still asking about Bei Yunja's score. She heard a classmate sigh. The highest score of Class 1 seems to be Chu Zhixing, right? 589 points. But he didn't even pass the foreign language test, yet he still got such a high score. He's also a dark horse. Really? This time, Bei Yunj came to take the exam. I thought it was her. Leia smiled and heaved a sigh of relief. Compared to Johan, she did not want to see Bei Yunj get a high score. Her? She's not even in the top 3. It's not like you don't know how long she hasn't been in class. Even if you participate in the college entrance examination, you will only be at the level of cannon fodder. Leia smiled without saying anything. Suddenly, someone rushed in from the door. No, not good. I heard that the neighboring Johan got 660 points. After saying this, Leia's expression changed, and the pen in her hand almost broke. 660. This was too high. How is that possible? Everyone gasped, but seeing Leia's dark face, they did not dare to say anything. At this moment, in the conference hall, the homeroom teachers who knew about Johan's results were also very quiet. Was Yunqing number 1 middle school preparing to make a comeback? Look. Did Hongda perform to its full potential in this exam? The form teachers were being reprimanded. End of chapter. Chapter 10-13. There's a difference of more than 10 points between our first place and theirs. The principal pointed at these form teachers. Hongda's reputation has been ruined in my hands. Principal, let's calm down. A form teacher hurriedly said. Leia isn't the only one in class 7. This Qin Youjiao is still in our nation. The form teacher of class 7 immediately understood. Yes, Youjiao didn't fall behind in her studies overseas. The last time I sent her a paper, she scored even higher than Leia. Hearing this, the principal calmed down a little. You mean Qin Youjiao's results didn't drop? This was also very surprising to the principal. That's right. Besides, Qin Youjiao even has policy bonus points when she comes back. How can she not compare to Zhou Han next door? The form teacher of class 7 changed the topic and glanced at teacher 1, mocking him sarcastically. Sigh, this is also taking leave, but good students will never disappoint. Oh right, teacher 1, didn't you say that Bei Yunj could get first? How much did she score? Teacher 1 glanced at her. I was in class for the first 2 periods and didn't check the scores. The form teacher of class 7 laughed and said thought-provokingly. Then you have to tell us after you're done. Maybe she's the first of the 9 schools? The rest of the people present had already asked about class 1's results and knew that the form teacher of class 7 was deliberately finding trouble. All right. The principal took a deep breath. There's still the 9 schools exchange later. It's in number 1 high school. Come with me. The meeting room was exceptionally silent. They had lost too badly this time. Not only did they lose to number 1 high school next door, they even had to go to number 1 high school to listen to them show off. Teacher 1 returned to class 1. The rankings had already been printed out. Bei Yunj had also returned to Hongda, because of the strange call last night. Reporting. Before teacher 1 could speak, he heard a voice at the door. Why are you back? Bei Yunj was perplexed. I received 2 strange calls last night. They asked me to report to Yinda Beichuan. Bei Yunj probed. Was I betrayed by the school? Lu Yuanxi was shocked. There's such a scam call? Bei Yunj was speechless. It's probably a scam call. I'll report it to the school after class. After teacher 1 finished speaking, he gestured for Bei Yunj to return to her seat. Come in and listen to the results of this exam. When Bei Yunj heard this, she subconsciously walked inside. But as soon as he sat down, he was pulled by Lu Yuanxi. What happened to your results? What do you mean what happened? Bei Yunj turned to look at him. The first place is Brother Chu, and the second place is He Yu. I'm already in 5th place, and you're not even in the top 10. Lu Yuanxi said bitterly. You'd better come back early so we can go to class together. Listen to Yan. Bei Yunj immediately snatched the ranking list from the front desk. She couldn't believe that she could get this question wrong. But in the end, the first place really wasn't hers. But not long after, Bei Yunj suddenly looked up and interrupted Mr. 1. Mr. 1, where did my grades go? What results? Where did they go? All the results are out. It's impossible that yours isn't. After teacher 1 finished speaking, he subconsciously asked, Your results aren't on the list? The class was very quiet. Then the ranking list in Bei Yunj's hands was snatched away by someone else. Damn, why doesn't Master Pei have any results? When teacher 1 heard this, he also checked the results. In the end, Bei Yunj's results really weren't there. Teacher 1 couldn't help but ask, Did you skip the exam? End of chapter. Chapter 10-14. Bei Yunj was speechless. Chu Zhixing immediately explained. Teacher, that's impossible. Every time Yunj goes, number 1 high school will call the principal's office. Bei Yunj was speechless. Bei Yunj, tell me honestly. Did you write the papers seriously? Teacher 1 had also heard that Bei Yunj was looking for trouble in the examination hall. Number 1 high school was just short of banning Bei Yunj. Bei Yunj thought for a moment. I think so. Teacher 1's eyelid twitched. This answer made him too ashamed to ask the principal. At the 9 schools exchange, other than the form teacher and principal, Leia also went, but her expression was still not too good. She only felt better after being comforted by the principal. Although they did not surpass Johan this time, they were still much better than Beiyunj. However, the moment the principal and the form teachers entered number 1 high school, the people from number 1 high school did not hesitate to show off. Hongda didn't perform well this time, did they? They let our number 1 high school take the lead again. The principal of number 1 high school could not hide the pride in his tone. The principal of Hongda only gave a fake smile. Number 1 high school has taught well. Actually, we didn't teach much. The main thing is that the students are obedient and know how to study hard. The principal of number 1 high school kept instilling his unique teaching philosophy into the principal of Hongda. However, after the 9 school teams arrived, the 9 principals of Hongda number 1 high school were waiting for the top schools in the joint examination. After all, the joint examination of the 9 schools would determine the guaranteed spots for each school. However, no one expected the principal of Beichuan University to come. Before this, they had never seen this person come personally. The principal of number 1 high school immediately stood up and smiled like a flower. "Principal Tan, why are you here personally?" The other principals knew that number 1 high school was in the limelight this time, and these high schools probably wanted to get more people from number 1 high school. Just as expected, the principal of Beichuan shook hands with the principal of number 1 high school. "Of course it's for our country's good seedlings. These students are better than the other in your hands." The principal of number 1 high school pretended to be humble, but he was grinning from ear to ear. "Not at all. It's the students' talent." However, just as the Hongda principal was about to roll his eyes, the Beichuan principal suddenly turned to look at him. "Headmaster Jian, you really surprise me every year. How did you nurture the number 1 student in your school? Aren't you going to share your experience?" After saying this, everyone was stunned. Wait a minute. Wasn't the first place of the 9 schools from number 1 high school? How could Beichuan's headmaster not know about this? The first high school's principal's expression instantly turned ugly. He could only look at the Hongda principal with a fake smile. Hongda's principal paused. "Who are you talking about?" The Beichuan principal was stunned for a moment before he patted the Hongda principal's shoulder and teased. "Old Jian, you're too pretentious. After so many years, this is the first time I've met someone who scored full marks in all the subjects. You still don't know which student did it?" Hongda's principal. Was this a student from their school? Well, what? The first high school's principal's face turned pale, and he almost couldn't stand still. "Wait, you really don't know? Don't you know the standards of the students in your school?" Beichuan's principal asked suspiciously. But suddenly, Teacher Wen suddenly probed carefully. "Is her surname Pei?" Yes. This student should be called Beiyunj, right? Her future is limitless." End of this chapter. Chapter 10-15. This was the first time he had called a student in so many years. In the end, he was blacklisted. The principal of Hongda hesitated. "Our school first place? Who are you talking about?" He didn't believe that Leia would have the guts to blacklist the principal of Yin University. However, the principal of Beichuan turned around and asked, "You were blacklisted too?" It was a sudden feeling of mutual appreciation. The principal of Yin University's eyelids twitched. There was actually more than one. The high school principals were all silent. The form teachers of Hongda were also thinking, this shouldn't be a student from their class. Only Teacher Wen had a bad feeling about this, but not long after. The principal of Beichuan was also very curious. "This is the first time in so many years that I've met someone who scored full marks in all subjects. You still don't know which student did it?" The principal of Hongda was speechless. Full marks in all subjects? Was this a student from their school? Why didn't he know? What? The principal of number 1 high school turned pale and almost blacked out. He had finally nurtured Johan, who scored 660 points. Hongda had given him a full marks in all subjects. Wait a minute, you really don't know? You don't know the standards of the students in your school? The principal of Yin University couldn't help but ask. But suddenly, the principal of Hongda was caught off guard and teacher Wen probed carefully. Is her surname Pei? The principal and form teachers of Hongda were speechless. Yes. This student should be called Bei Yunj, right? The principal of Yin University was suddenly excited. The principal and form teachers of Hongda were confused. The form teacher of Class 1's smile froze. How was this possible? Bei Yunj scored full marks in all subjects. Not only the form teacher of Class 1, even Lei Ye's pupils constricted as she stared at the principals instinctively. How could Bei Yunj score full marks? But I didn't see Bei Yunj's score. Teacher Wen muttered again. The principal of Yin University said calmly. Principal Tan said that the score was too high and he wanted to suppress it first to see if there was a mistake. Everyone was speechless. What mistake? He probably wanted to suppress the score and hook up with the students first so that other schools wouldn't intercept. Not long after, there was really a principal from another high school who asked curiously, Principal Jian, how did you recruit a student who scored full marks in all subjects? Hongda's principal's heart was about to crack. How should he answer this question? How did he manage to recruit them? Bei Yunj's crazy brothers donated a building to her? The principals and teachers of Hongda weren't the only ones who had a mental breakdown. The faces of the teachers and vice principals who had been tortured by Bei Yunj were even more twisted. This Bei Yunj again. She casually took a test and got full marks for all the subjects. In the end, all the students in exam hall 29 were annihilated by her. Suddenly, a teacher from number 1 high school sneered as if he had caught Hongda's weakness. I heard from Bei Yunj that she had reviewed all the questions for the joint examination at school. I don't know when Hongda's teachers became so good at guessing questions. It was obvious that Hongda was helping Bei Yunj cheat. But at this moment, a homeroom teacher from Hongda said coldly, what kind of joke is this? Bei Yunj didn't come to class this semester. How could she have guessed the questions? Half of teacher Wen's hair fell out because of her. The teachers from number 1 high school were speechless. Teacher Wen was speechless. Hongda's principal was speechless. He had a feeling that Hongda was the one who picked up the scraps this time. P.S. The previous chapter has been changed a little. Babies, you can refresh and read it again. Master Pei is from class 7. Old Sue has mixed it up. Change it tomorrow. Did our little friend cast a monthly vote? Pinch face. End of this chapter. Chapter 10:16. The expression of the number 1 high school teacher twitched as he instantly understood why Bei Yunj said that. She was deliberately creating pressure for the other students. The principal of number 1 high school regained his senses and could not help but say with a fake smile, she doesn't even attend classes. It seems like Hongda still needs to discipline such a student. Hearing this, the principal of Hongda refused to admit defeat. When he regained his senses, he smiled at him. Since the principal of number 1 high school is so concerned, why don't you go to the Computing Institute personally and ask for her for Hongda? With that said, the principals were stunned and doubted their ears. Computing Institute? The principal of Yin University asked instinctively. Bei Yunj was from the Computing Institute. I heard from Professor C that old Mr. Zhong likes Yunj a lot, so. The principal of Hongda hesitated, but he did not hide the pride on his face. Elder Zhong likes student Pei? The principal of Yin University was a little incoherent. Then student Pei is a member of the Computing Institute? Hearing this, the eyes of the other principals turned red. This was the Computing Institute. The top computing technology institute in the country. It was said that Yin University's postgraduate students might not even be recruited, but Elder Zhong only took a fancy to a high school student. I'm not sure about that. It's just that Professor C mentioned it a few times. Even if she hasn't entered the institute yet, she has to enter when she goes to university in the future. The principal of Hongda said with a smile. In the past, old Mr. Zhong came to Hongda and wanted Yunj to go to the institute for an internship, but he was rejected. Young people more or less have a temper. The eyelids of the others twitched. Her temper was too bad. She actually rejected the institute. When the principals of Beichuan and Yin University heard this, they suddenly felt that it was reasonable for them to be blacklisted. Student pays form teacher should have her number too, right? Can I trouble the form teacher to help contact student pay? With that said, the principal of Hongda looked at Teacher 1. Teacher 1 replied with a fake smile. No problem. Then indeed, the moment the form teacher called, the other party picked up very quickly. Teacher 1. Her lazy voice rang out. Why Yunj? Under everyone's gaze, Teacher 1 felt a lot of pressure. Did someone call you today? The other party said slowly. Didn't you say it's a fraud gang? They're all blacklisted. Teacher 1 was speechless. He should not have turned on the speaker. Instantly, the atmosphere in the arena was dead silent. Everyone immediately understood what was going on. The gazes of the two principals also fell on Teacher 1. Those two are really the principals of Beichuan University and Yin University. Mr. Wen took a deep breath. Because you scored full marks in all subjects, so I want to talk to you. After saying this, everyone thought that Bei Yunj would be very excited. Unexpectedly, she suddenly asked, so my score was suppressed by them? The principal of Yin University was speechless. Beichuan's principal. Just as the principals of the other high schools were thinking that this student didn't know what was good for him, a familiar roar could be heard. Chat. What was there to talk about? Go or hang up immediately. Tell them to go as far as they can. How dare you lower the score of the person I'm in? As soon as he finished speaking, Beichuan's and Yin University's principal's heart skipped a beat. They immediately recognized the voice. Someone asked uncertainly, Is this Elder Zhong? Chapter 10:17. The people at the side looked at the person who asked the question, as if they were looking at a fool. Other than Mr. Zhong Shenglin, who would dare to shout at the principals of two top schools. At this moment, the two principals were also stunned by Zhong Shenglin's shout. After coming back to his senses, the Beichuan principal's scalp went numb. Teacher Zhong, so it's you. The Beichuan principal laughed dryly, feeling even more terrified. After all, the Beichuan principal was also the one whose thesis had been blocked by Elder Zhong. Zhong Shenglin smiled indifferently. Principal Tan, what can I do for you? The Beichuan principal was speechless. He was really angry. Everyone could tell that this student of Hongda held a very high position in Zhong Shenglin's heart. Oh, is it because Guer blocked the two principals? Then I'll apologize to you on behalf of my Gu. Zhong Shenglin suddenly said leisurely. The Beichuan principal broke out in cold sweat. No, there's no need, teacher. Similarly, the Yin University principal did not dare to breathe loudly, and silently lowered his presence. However, the next moment. Eat. You're still eating. Bye, you usually talk a lot of nonsense, but now you're pretending to be autistic, right? Zhong Shenglin used his chopsticks to knock the tripe that Bai Mingzhang had just picked up back into the pot. Bai Mingzhang's hand stopped. This old thing usually only ate clear soup when eating hot pot. Why did it seem like he was on fire every day? Why was he so angry? Bai Mingzhang glanced at Zhong Shenglin bitterly and said to Bei Yunj, Guer, give me the phone. I'll say it. However, everyone on the other end of the phone was stunned. Why did this voice sound like Mr. Bai Mingzhang's voice? Xiaowen, give the phone to Principal Xiang. I have a call to talk to him. Teacher Wen's smile froze. He did not expect to be so lucky in this life to be called Xiaowen by Elder Bai. However, when the principal of Yin University heard this, two words appeared in his mind. It's over. He knew that he would definitely be reprimanded this time. Elder Bai, it's me. After the principal of Yin University took the phone, he walked to a corner and listened to the lecture seriously. As for the others, when they saw that Beichuan's principal was still on the phone explaining to Zhong Shenglin, Yin University's principal was also reprimanded until he wilted. His eyes widened. Was this a dream? Wasn't the direction of this matter a little too mysterious? Not long after, everyone started to think about the same thing. What was the background of this student who scored full marks in all subjects? Where did all these big shots in the academic circle come from? In the end, although Bai Mingzhang didn't harshly reprimand the principal, he made it clear that Yun University didn't need such a competitive method. Principal Xiang was personally groomed by Bai Mingzhang to be his successor. When he heard Bai Mingzhang's words, he couldn't help but feel ashamed. After hanging up the phone, the principals of Beichuan and Yun University both apologized to the principal of Hengda. This reversal made everyone else fall silent. They couldn't help but feel envious. Why was Hengda so lucky every time? This was full marks for all subjects. 20 years ago, there was also a male examinee who was 2 points short of full marks in the college entrance examination. However, the joint examination of the 9 schools, in layman's terms, was a guaranteed entry exam. In terms of the difficulty of the questions, it was even more difficult than the college entrance examination. However, even so, this person was able to get full marks for all subjects. The exchange meeting began. The first lieutenant colonel, who was originally smug, fell silent. They had originally agreed to give a speech for the first place in the joint examination, but now, no one dared to call Bai Yunj. They were afraid that the person who answered the phone would be Zhong Shenglin or Bai Mingzhang. Chapter 10:18. The principal of Hengda was also very passive. Historically, the school that had brought out the first place of the 9 schools would share their teaching experience. However, this first place of the 9 schools seemed to have nothing to do with the school. Therefore, halfway through his speech, when the principal of Hengda mentioned the first place of the 9 schools, the atmosphere was awkward. Below the stage, Leia clenched her fists tightly. Her face was dark as she bit her lip. How could this be? How could Bai Yunj do so well? Didn't she not come to class? Could it be that she secretly revised elsewhere? After the exchange meeting ended, the principal of Beichuan University suddenly pulled the principal of Yun University. He asked, "Old Xiang, is this Bai Yunj the one from the Qin family?" The principal of Yun University was stunned. What Qin family? The eldest daughter of the Qin family. Before she was 17 years old, Director Lin Lanjun personally raised her. When the principal of Beichuan University mentioned it, the principal of Yun University suddenly remembered that there was such a thing. At that time, Yun University had caused quite a commotion. It's really her. The principal of Yun University widened his eyes. But didn't they say that the eldest daughter of the Qin family doesn't have any learning talent? If this was called not talented, then others were brainless? How could you not know about Director Lin's daughter? The principal of Beichuan University wanted to strangle him to death. You're still talking about me? Bai Yunj is at the Computing Institute. You used to be Elder Zhong's favorite student. How could you not know anything? The two of them pushed the blame to each other. In the afternoon, after the school went back, they all changed their strategy for the college entrance examination. Instead of fighting for first place, they only fought for second place. There was no hope for this year's college entrance examination top scorer. Not long after, the news that the real first place was a Hengda student spread. First place, full marks for all subjects, directly crushing all the top students of the 9 schools. And the second place was a full 90 points lower than the first place. The people who were originally shouting that the students of Hengda next door were all trash in number 1 high school's Tieba also silently deleted the post. Where the hell did this person pop out from? Full marks for all subjects. Was this something a human would do? The next day, Bai Yunj was curled up on the sofa with an open book on her face. On the table was the fruit that Aunt Meow had just cut. Suddenly her phone rang. What's wrong? Bai Yunj asked lazily after she answered the call. Master Pei, not bad. You scored full marks in all subjects. This result really makes our old one proud. If there's nothing else, I'm hanging up, she said uninterestedly. No. Lu Yuanxi immediately interrupted and continued. This time, in order to celebrate your first place, I, Fatty Chu, and Yao Yao are going to the amusement park with you. I heard that there's a haunted house that's especially exciting. Also, it's said to be very high-tech. Bai Yunj. I'm not going. Suddenly, Song Yao interrupted and asked, Yunj, don't you like it? Before Bai Yunj could answer, she heard Lu Yuanxi ask in shock. Master Pei, are you afraid of ghosts? Bei Yunj. Yunj then we. Before Song Yao could finish speaking, Bei Yunj snorted. Send me the address. No need. We're right outside your house. Lu Yuanxi smiled. Bei Yunj. At noon, Bei Yunj sat beside Song Yao and said casually, What's so fun about a haunted house? I heard that many of them are reenactments of scenes from some horror movie. Besides, this movie is based on a real incident. Some time ago, someone even said that there were non-staff members inside. Chu Zhixing said mysteriously. Chapter 1019. Bei Yunj glanced at Chu Zhixing faintly. Chu Zhixing was speechless. Did he say something wrong? Let's go, fatty. Let's go buy tickets. With that said, Lu Yuanxi started playing with Chu Zhixing. It attracted the attention of many girls. Bei Yunj pressed down the brim of his hat, and the tip of his shoes tapped the ground from time to time. His expression was still lazy. Song Yao pretended not to see Bei Yunj's wandering eyes, but the corners of her lips could not help but curl up. After Lu Yuanxi and Chu Zhixing returned, the four of them lined up to enter the haunted house. The good-looking quartet also attracted a lot of attention. But in the next moment, Bei Yunj looked up and saw the real NPC outside the field right in front of her. She almost turned around and left. Yunj, are you alright? Song Yao asked. This was originally to let Bei Yunj relax. However, she did not expect that Bei Yunj did not seem to like haunted houses. Let's go in. Bei Yunj felt Lu Yuanxi and Chu Zhixing's gazes from the front and licked his lips. The interior of the haunted house was dark. Under the eerie atmosphere, the dark green light floating in the air was inexplicably terrifying. Lu Yuanxi and Chu Zhixing could not help but swallow. Little Chu, little Lu. At this moment, Bei Yunj's lazy voice made them feel extremely at ease. Don't be afraid, I'm here. But in the next moment, before Lu Yuanxi and Chu Zhixing could feel touched, they were caught off guard and pushed to the front. Bei Yunj, can't you learn how to be a human? The high technology mentioned in the promotional slogan was true. Bei Yunj and the other two had just walked forward when they realized that there was a ship in front of them. Then Lu Yuanxi had just run over when his heart almost exploded from fright. A pair of pale hands suddenly appeared at the edge of the ship. The first NPC appeared. The NPC was a mermaid with a rotten body. One of her eyeballs was about to fall out, and there was a strange and gloomy smile on her face. From their line of sight, there was a projection under the ship. This was the surging black sea designed by the device, and below the NPC's waist was a huge dark blue fish tail. In fact, it was even bigger than the ship that the four of them were on. He could hear the waves and the strange and shrill cries of birds. It's really high-tech. Song Yao sighed. Bei Yunj didn't look too good. Was technology meant for them to use? In the end, Bei Yunj was dragged onto the boat. Along the way, the mermaid NPC didn't say a word. She only stared at Bei Yunj from time to time with a scary smile on her face. Bei Yunj, look over there. Chu Zhixing suddenly shouted. Bei Yunj turned around and saw the bloody words at the mouth of the shore. In the resentment spiritual field, the living will not return. At this moment, Bei Yunj suddenly felt that even the mermaid NPCs had delicate features. Sister, can I not get off the boat? Bei Yunj discussed it with her seriously. The mermaid NPC was speechless. This was the first time he had encountered such an unreasonable request. In the end, Bei Yunj was forced to get off the boat. Along the way, only Song Yao was calm. When she saw the NPC, she even touched his head. The NPC was so embarrassed that he went to scare Bei Yunj. After a few rounds, there was only one thought in Bei Yunj's mind. Leave this damn place quickly. However, at the last fork, there were 4 forks in the road. Hospital, cinema, castle, cemetery. The NPC reminded them that the 4 of them had to split up at least once before they could leave with clues. Only a true warrior would choose the last path. Master Pei, you can choose first. Chu Zhixing looked at Bei Yunj. P.S. Next, Master Pei will perform what it means to be unlucky. The haunted house will start an important plot line. End of this chapter. Chapter 10:20. Bei Yunj looked at Song Yao. Tian Tian, which one do you want to choose? Song Yao frowned and said hesitantly, there might be too many people in the cemetery. Let's go to the hospital. Bei Yunj was speechless. Lu Yuanxi and Chu Zhixing were speechless. This might be the only good young man present who believed in science and opposed superstition. Master Pei, we believe in science. Be brave. Lu Yuanxi stuffed the cemetery into Bei Yunj's hands. Bei Yunj was speechless. A few minutes later, Chu Zhixing took the castle, and Lu Yuanxi took the cemetery. Lu Yuanxi watched as Bei Yunj lazily put the cinema tickets he had snatched from him into his pocket, and walked towards the fork in the road. According to Bei Yunj's sixth sense, the cinema should be the safest. At most, an NPC would crawl out from behind the projection screen. Or, if the entire cinema was filled with NPCs, it would be quite lively. With this thought in mind, Bei Yunj walked in slowly. However, the two NPCs leading the way looked at Bei Yunj with a sigh. This young lady is really ruthless to herself. She actually dared to choose the home ground restoration. There were 4 forks in the cinema. Only one of them was the main storyline, and the others were all side routes. The restoration of the main storyline scene would carry out the terrifying essence of this cinema. Unfortunately, this was the case. The main storyline was the cinema in Bei Yunj's hands. She's really strong. I've been here for 2 months, and I don't want to go back to the main storyline scene. This is 2F** King suffocating. At the thought of the cinema, the two NPCs could not help but feel their scalps turn numb. Not long after, Bei Yunj, who had pushed open the door of the cinema, also realized that something was wrong. The cinema was dark and empty, but a black and white movie was playing on the large screen. It was like the most realistic documentary. The video was even stuck on the white screen, causing the lights in the cinema to flicker. Bei Yunj was speechless. Why was the atmosphere no better than the cemetery? Bei Yunj glanced at the clue and saw that she had to watch the movie for 10 minutes. So she could only choose a seat in the middle of the room and sit down. However, not long after, as the plot of the movie changed, the most terrifying scene in the movie appeared. The only grandson of the crazy, disfigured old woman was killed by the villagers on purpose. Every night, she would use her hoarse and unpleasant voice to sing songs to coax the children, but the children in the village were so scared that they didn't dare to sleep. In the end, the villagers couldn't take it anymore and decided to seal the door of the old lady's house and let her fend for herself. He didn't want the little girls in the village to know about this. She couldn't stop the adults, so she could only secretly pry open the old granny's wooden wall at night, hoping to save the old granny. She didn't expect that one day, when the little girl had just knocked out a small hole and was delivering food to the old lady, the old woman didn't take it. Instead, she gave her a cruel smile and suddenly swung the iron hoe at her. A faint trace of blood appeared on the girl's face, and she retreated in fear. Then, she saw with her own eyes that the old woman in front of her had abandoned her, stood on a stool, and hanged herself. She struggled with all her might, and her eyes became bloodshot. Finally, she gave her a strange smile. This scene happened to be directed at Bei Yunj. She saw with her own eyes that the old woman stopped breathing. The girl in the movie was so scared that she burst into tears. Bei Yunj, who was watching the same scene, turned pale. A memory fragment in her mind overlapped with the scene in front of her. At this moment, a black shadow suddenly appeared on the screen of the movie. Chapter 10:21. It was a person struggling with all her might, tugging at the rope around her neck. She was behind Bei Yunj, hanging in front of the projection equipment in the theater. The atmosphere was oppressive, helpless, and desperate. However, at this moment, Bei Yunj's eyes were red as she sat stiffly on the chair. In her mind were countless memories that had torn her personality apart. Yunj. Song Yao called Bei Yunj a few times. It was only when she heard the last word that Bei Yunj looked up instinctively. However, this was Song Yao's first time seeing Bei Yunj have such a gaze. Emptiness, helplessness, and a trace of cold vigilance and hostility. It was as if she had been abandoned. Song Yao pursed her lips and found that the special effects here were much scarier than what she had seen just now. Yunj, it's all fake. Song Yao's eyes were beautiful as she reached out to touch her head instinctively and coaxed her gently. Bei Yunja's eyelashes fluttered. When she saw that it was Song Yao, her expression was calm, but her eyes were a little dry. Then before Song Yao could say anything, the person sitting in the seat suddenly reached out and hugged Song Yao's waist. Her voice was imperceptibly hoarse. "Why did you only come to find me now?" Song Yao had seen Bei Yunj in high spirits countless times, so when she suddenly saw this person in front of her, her throat felt inexplicably choked. Song Yao explained softly, "The elevator in the hospital is really broken. I can only take the fire stairs down." "Yunj, don't you want me to send you?" Song Yao grabbed Bei Yunja's hand and wrinkled her nose. She was a little worried. With Bei Yunja's state just now, Song Yao did not want to see it again in her life. "No need. I still have something on. Go back early." Bei Yunj lowered the brim of her hat, and her voice sounded the same as usual. She only knocked her head lazily. "What can Master Pei do? Go back early." With that said, Lu Yuanxi hesitated for a moment. "Song Yao, you're going back so late. Should I send you?" Song Yao was the only one who was treated like a girl. "Then help me send Tian back. I'll get going first." Bei Yunj held her phone and waved at them. Then he walked toward the intersection not far away. Song Yao looked at Bei Yunja's back and frowned instinctively. "What's wrong? Is Master Pei crying inside?" Lu Yuanxi asked Song Yao excitedly. Song Yao shook her head and muttered, "It's just very strange." "What's strange?" Chu Zhixing asked. After Song Yao regained her senses, she did not say anything and only said, "I'm going back too. I don't need you to send me off." With that said, Song Yao unconsciously followed behind Bei Yunj, afraid that something would happen to Bei Yunj on the way. At the subway station, Bei Yunj looked distracted and did not notice Song Yao not far away. Until an hour later, Song Yao saw Bei Yunj arrive home with her own eyes before she turned and left. 3 days in a row, Bei Yunj had been writing reports all night and only rested for 2 to 3 hours during the day. On the 4th day, Bei Yunj returned to the computing institute. Inside, a chubby intern was telling dirty jokes to girls. When he saw Bei Yunj's red eyes, he teased, "Oh, Master Pei, did you indulge too much?" Then Bei Yunj, who was about to leave, suddenly turned around, raised her leg and kicked him in the butt. Bei Yunj had his hands in his pockets and a document report under his forearm. He glanced sideways and his casual appearance made him look even more difficult to deal with. "You have a lot to do?" The others could clearly feel that Bei Yunja's aura today was "Don't provoke me." End of chapter. Chapter 1022. The fat intern had always been unrestrained and liked to joke too much. However, he did not expect someone to make a move in the institute. When the teaching staff saw this scene, they were also stunned. "Pei, manage your intern well." Bei Yunj glanced at him, restrained her aura and turned to leave. The other girls cheered in their hearts. This damn fatty deserved to be beaten. He liked to make disgusting jokes every day and was so confident. F***ck. Teacher, what kind of background does this woman have? She's too damn arrogant. Before the fat intern could finish speaking, he was stopped by the teaching staff. "Shut up. Are you tired of living? How dare you challenge her?" In the entire institute, who would dare to make Bei Yunj unhappy? The fat intern was stunned. He did not expect the teaching staff to reprimand him like this because of Bei Yunj. However, Bei Yunj was clearly a few years younger than him. The fat intern lowered his head. No one saw the indignation in his eyes. "What's wrong with you? I heard that you hit an intern the moment you came in." Bei Yunj looked at the project book and started to prepare for the experiment. She said leisurely, "I overdid it." Si Qingyan was speechless. "Then, isn't your project progressing too quickly? Won't your brain be damaged if you use it like this?" Si Qingyan could not help but touch Bei Yunj's enviable head. However, the next moment, he was shocked by the unreal temperature. "Damn, it's so hot." Bei Yunj glanced at him. "If there's nothing else, get out." "Bei Yunj, have you gone crazy these few days? You're running a high fever and you're still working on the project. Do you think it's fine even if your brain is damaged?" Si Qingyan asked in disbelief. It won't be damaged. Bei Yunj did not even look up. Si Qingyan looked at her for a while and knew that it was useless to persuade her, so he simply called in front of Bei Yunj. Hello, old master? Do you know how high your precious heir's fever is now? He's still. Suddenly, Bei Yunj snatched Si Qingyan's phone. Are you looking for trouble with me? Master Pei, you're too irritable now. You're even scarier than the first time I saw you. Hearing this, Bei Yunj's eyes flickered. She returned the phone to him and said lightly sorry. Although Si Qingyan felt that Bei Yunj's temper was definitely not good, it was as if she had taken gunpowder today. Si Qingyan said, I'll take you to the hospital. Bei Yunj hesitated. Can't we find a private doctor? Si Qingyan was speechless. He was really born with a silver spoon in his mouth. At the hospital, Bei Yunj looked at Si Qingyan beside her. Brother Yan, is the new medicine not ready yet? Si Qingyan was stunned. Recently I think I need it. Bei Yunj slowly adjusted his cuffs. Si Qingyan was silent for a moment. Actually, Dr. Cui has also developed, Bei Yunj thought for a moment. Brother Yan, if you don't have any new drugs, can you get me some sleeping pills? Bei Yunj was a typical good-looking person who was easily forgiven for all the bad things she had done, especially now that she looked sickly. Her skin was sickly pale, and her black hair was hanging down softly. Her phoenix eyes, which were usually lazy, were filled with an unruly and aggressive aura when she raised the tip of her tail. But now she was just looking at him quietly. It gave people the illusion that she was obedient, and their hearts softened. Si Qingyan was speechless. Fortunately, this guy never pretended to be obedient and focused on scientific research. He did not engage in relationships. Otherwise, people would seek revenge every day in the institute. End of chapter. Chapter 10:23. Si Qingyan rubbed the hair at the back of his head in frustration. If I give you any medicine, old master will strangle me to death personally. The medicine Bei Yunj used was tested by the higher-ups and confirmed to be safe. However, this was the first time Si Qingyan had seen Bei Yunj's eyes so red, and her lazy expression had a hint of indifference. Then forget it. Before Bei Yunj could finish speaking, Si Qingyan turned around and left quickly. When he returned, Si Qingyan threw the medicine in his hand into Bei Yunj's arms. I asked my friend to prescribe it for you. You're not allergic, are you? Bei Yunj looked at the ingredients and smiled lazily. No thank you, Brother Yan. Si Qingyan was speechless. Alright, he regretted it after doing this. Don't worry, I'll say that I bought it. Bei Yunj put the medicine back into her pocket. Si Qingyan hesitated. Try not to eat it. Compared to the old master, he was more afraid that something would really happen to Bei Yunj. In the wee hours of the morning, after tossing and turning, Bei Yunj went downstairs to pour a glass of water. Sitting on the sofa, Bei Yunj subconsciously glanced at her phone and called Huashidu, but she quickly hung up. At this time, the man might be working. However, she did not expect. Bei Yunj was about to get up when her phone suddenly rang. After picking up the call, it was the man's deep and pleasant voice. There was a magnetic smile in his voice, as if he could calm her down. What's wrong? Can't Yunyan sleep? Bei Yunj licked her red lips. I called the wrong number just now. I can't sleep. There was a low chuckle in the man's voice. It was hopelessly sexy. In the quiet night, everything seemed gentle and explicit. You even bought a gift for Yunyan. What? Bei Yunj asked instinctively. Unexpectedly, a video call suddenly popped up on her phone. After the call was connected, Bei Yunj looked at the dim light on the screen. The man's well-defined hand suddenly took out a red headband from the side. For some reason, she had a bad feeling. As expected, when Bei Yunj saw it clearly, she realized that it was a pair of elk antlers. Bei Yunj was speechless. What special fetish did this man have? Huashida glanced at Bei Yunj. The corners of his peach blossom eyes curled up, looking seductive and light. He said naturally, brother likes little bunnies too. Bei Yunj looked up and saw the man's slender and clean hand playing with another white cat ear that had appeared out of nowhere. This scene was inexplicably ambiguous and seductive. It made people blush and their hearts beat faster. However, the man was quite regretful. It's a pity that Sung-soo couldn't buy it after going to 3 stores. Bae-yeon's hwa. Did Sung-soo have any self-awareness as a personal assistant? Bae-yeon rejected him expressionlessly. Doesn't Yoon like furry things? Of course. The man said this without blushing at all. Bae-yeon. If this thing appeared in someone else's hands, she would find it cute. However, this D*MN man's gaze was obviously wrong. I'm going to sleep. Bae-yeon hung up the phone, afraid that Hwashidu would say something else. The man looked at the young lady on the other end of the video call. Her face was tense, but her ears were red. He could not help but smile. But soon, Hwashidu casually threw the white cat ear in his hand on the table. Go and call Zhong Shenglin and ask when the test for the medicine will be over. P.S. Not long after I got home, I'll continue to update. End of chapter. Chapter 1024. At night, after being disturbed by Hwashida's thoughts, she inexplicably slept much better. The next day, at the Computing Institute, Bae-yeon sent a message to the man. When is brother coming back? Very quickly, there was a reply. Yoon misses me that much. Bae-yeon. She could almost imagine Hwashida's tone when he said this to her. What are you looking at, Master Pei? Si Ching-yen couldn't help asking. Bae-yeon glanced at Hwashidu and instinctively put her phone back into her pocket. Nothing. Si Ching-yen held the thermos flask with one hand, and almost thought that he was seeing Bae-yeon in a relationship. However, Bae-yeon's eyes were indeed not so red today. Bae-yeon. She didn't know whether to say that this medicine was effective or that Hwashidu was effective. Si Ching-yen suddenly remembered. You just went to get a drip yesterday. Why are you still here today? Did you take medicine yesterday? Si Ching-yen asked. Bae-yeon replied, yes. Si Ching-yen nodded thoughtfully. The effect is quite good. Back home, Bae-yeon was chatting with Auntie Meow downstairs when she suddenly received a message from the man. Sleep in brother's bedroom today. There's nothing much at home. Seeing that Bae-yeon was in a better state than yesterday, Si Ching-yen did not say much and only reminded her to rest well. At 5 in the afternoon, Bae-yeon was chased out of the institute and asked to rest early. Bae-yeon. Couldn't he do something that a human should do? Miss Assistant Sung came over just now, Auntie Meow said. Bae-yeon had yet to send a message to ask. Then, she saw another new message. This way you can dream of brother. Bae-yeon had just gone upstairs when she knew what Sung-soo had done. He had cut off the power in her room. Bae-yeon. Bae-yeon asked without looking up. Is he here to get the documents? Not really. He just stood by our power supply box for a long time. I don't know what he's doing. At night. But after class, Jasmine and Tich's minds were in a mess. Did they just see a man's suit behind the teacher's back? Teacher Pei was cohabiting with someone? It was hard to guess who was behind this. Not long after, Bae-yeon went to the man's bedroom to borrow electricity and taught Jasmine and Tich for 2 hours. After he was done, he prepared to take a shower and sleep. She unconsciously frowned and opened her eyes, but she didn't see anyone in the bedroom. Outside the window, everything was quiet, and the night light was like fireflies. Yin. Bae-yeon, who knew nothing, changed into her pajamas and went to bed. There was a faint fragrance on the bed, which made people feel at ease as usual. In the middle of the night, Bae-yeon felt a little cold on her forehead and subconsciously reached out to take it. Only then did she realize that it was a cooling patch. She didn't know when the man had appeared in front of her. His usually lazy peach blossom eyes were now staring straight at her. Hwashidu was about to reach out and tidy up the cooling stickers that Bae-yeon had crooked. However, Bae-yeon suddenly grabbed his hand. The man's deep and familiar voice fell into her ears. She looked up. The man lowered his head in surprise, not wanting to meet the girl's direct gaze. This child had a fever and was confused, but she had become much bolder. Hwashidu curled his lips and patiently allowed her to hold his hand. His other hand slowly tidied up her cooling stickers. You can't even take care of yourself after being away for 2 weeks? Huashidu had just finished speaking when Bei Yunj suddenly called out, "Brother!" Chapter 1025. The man sat by the bed. Not long after he got off the plane, he rushed home. At first, he thought that the little girl could not sleep because he was not around. But he did not expect her to be sick. "Are you feeling unwell?" Huashidu sent a message to the private doctor and allowed the little girl to hold his hand. He said, "After sweating, you won't feel uncomfortable anymore." However, Huashidu did not know that Bei Yunj did not hear a single word he said. At this moment, Bei Yunj looked at him for a long time before saying, "Come here." Huashidu raised his eyebrows and looked at the little girl on the bed. There was a hint of playfulness in his nonchalant eyes. He put down his phone and listened to her. He sat closer. However, the little girl lying on the bed was still staring at him with dissatisfaction in her eyes. The man bent down with interest. His low and hoarse laughter was seductive. "Are you confused because you're sick, Yunyan?" Bei Yunj's eyes flickered. Then before the man could react, Bei Yunj suddenly reached out and wrapped her slender and fair arms around the man's neck. Huashidu was hooked by this sudden hug and leaned over instinctively. However, he quickly supported himself with one hand on the edge of the bed. He was afraid that he would hurt the culprit. "Yunyan." The man's voice was low and hoarse, and his sexy Adam's apple bobbed. But then Bei Yunj, who had her hands around Huashida's neck, gradually looked down. She stared at the mole on the man's Adam's apple. Suddenly, the man had yet to speak. Bei Yunj suddenly leaned closer, hooked her arms around the man's neck, and kissed the mole on his Adam's apple. The man also felt a soft and warm layer on his Adam's apple. His body froze, and an unknown evil fire suddenly rose in his lower abdomen. "Do I have to take the initiative even in my dreams, brother?" Bei Yunj did not notice the darkness in the man's eyes. Her beautiful eyes curved lazily, and she felt that she had completed a major event in her life. She finally kissed the mole on Huashida's Adam's apple. Although it was a dream, Huashidu was so angry that he laughed. In a dream? Bei Yunj, who was originally a little dizzy, saw Huashida's dangerous gaze clearly. This dream was a little realistic. "What else do you want?" The lazy and noble man suddenly laughed and asked her while raising the temperature in the room. "Tell me about it." Before Bei Yunj could regain her senses, she saw Huashidu throw the remote control away and suddenly take off his coat and suit jacket. Bei Yunj. She didn't think about that. Bei Yunj watched as the man pulled off his tie with one hand and silently pulled the blanket up. "I still want to sleep." Not long after, Bei Yunj was scooped up and leaned against the cushion behind her. They looked up and met each other's eyes. The man's eyes were dark and his magnetic voice was lazy and playful as he asked, "Isn't it too much of a loss for you to only kiss me once in your dream, Yunyan?" Bei Yunj's gaze fell on the place she had just kissed. Because it was her first time doing it, the kiss ended very quickly. Bei Yunj's heart started to itch again. However, when Bei Yunj looked up at Huashidu again, she quickly dismissed this thought. The man in front of her had a dark gaze. It was dangerous and aggressive, as if he could swallow her at any time. She didn't know why. Bei Yunj's mind was in a mess, but she had a premonition. If she really dared to act recklessly, this person would really punish her on the spot. End of this chapter. Chapter 1026. Bei Yunj. Wasn't this dream too dangerous? Brother, Just as Bei Yunj's thoughts were running wild, she suddenly seemed to hear movement at the door. Bei Yunj subconsciously looked at the door. Seeing that the young lady dared to be distracted in front of him, the man who had always been casual licked his itchy teeth. The next moment, Bei Yunj had just turned around when she was suddenly pressed against the cushion. She was surrounded by the man's strong aggressive aura. She looked up and met the man's explicit and burning gaze. This dream was too wild. It was precisely because of this that Bei Yunj did not suspect that this was not a dream. Normally, with the man's usual style, it was impossible for him to do these things to her. Suddenly, Bei Yunj sucked in a breath of cold air. The man bit her neck with a moderate amount of force. It was numb but not painful. However, the atmosphere was so ambiguous that it made her cheeks burn. Don't! Bei Yunj was about to push him away and subconsciously avoided the man's aggressive aggression. However, in the next moment, the man covered the back of her head with one hand and gently stroked her long black hair. In fact, he did not allow her to retreat. The man easily eased her uneasiness, but he also led this dangerous situation that made her blush and her heart race. Outside the door, it was Jiang Baichuan, whom he had met at the private clinic last time. When Huashidu came out again, Jiang Baichuan sized up the man in front of him. He was no different from usual. "Where's your family?" Jiang Baichuan asked. Huashidu lit a cigarette and casually leaned against the door. Inside, Jiang Baichuan. He remembered that Huashidu's family member was only in high school, right? Huashidu was smoking in front of him. Then, when Jiang Baichuan walked in, the girl was dressed neatly except for an obvious bite mark on her neck. Huashidu also had times when he was not human. Jiang Baichuan looked at Huashidu with a complicated expression. "I asked you to come and see a doctor, not to stand there foolishly." The man's voice sounded indifferently. Jiang Baichuan didn't dare to say much. He just quietly checked Bei Yunj's temperature and asked fearlessly, "Is it really just a fever? No other treatment needs?" There were also people in the circle who would often treat certain injuries caused by excessive indulgence in certain aspects for the lovers of the rich. Next, when Jiang Baichuan met Huashidu's gaze, he immediately shut his mouth. "Get some ointment for your neck," Huashidu said slowly. Jiang Baichuan said subconsciously, "The one on your neck will disappear in 2 or 3 days." Huashidu turned to look at him. "Yes, Master Du." Jiang Baichuan was very polite. "Continent K. What's the situation with Master Du? Where did he go? Why are you here to see me?" The man was wearing a white coat. His features were handsome and elegant, and his temperament was cold. "Zhou Yu said, Dr. Song, Master Du has returned to country A these few days, but he will be here soon." Song Su laughed. "Since when is there someone in country A who can make Master Du so happy that he forgets about home?" Zhou Yu was silent for a moment. "Master Du, this time, I brought her to see you." "What? He wants to bring a woman to see Continent K?" Song Su frowned, his tone filled with dissatisfaction. The next day, Bei Yunj woke up and felt that her hand hurt a little. She opened her eyes and saw that it seemed to have been injected with saline last night. After Bei Yunj went downstairs, she saw Huashidu reading the newspaper. "Brother?" A memory suddenly appeared in Bei Yunj's mind. The end of this chapter. Chapter 1027. Last night, she seemed to have had a very unruly dream. Bei Yunj thought of the scene where the man turned the tables, and her legs almost went weak. "Let's go downstairs and eat." The man's expression was natural, as if nothing had happened. "Brother, did you come back last night?" Bei Yunj probed. The man sat at the dining table and replied lightly, "Yes." Such a normal reaction made Bei Yunj feel that what happened last night was just a dream. "What's wrong?" Huashidu looked up at her. "Bei Yunj. Then did you greet me last night?" The man's hand that was holding his chopsticks stopped and he suddenly smiled. "Yunyan dreamed of me last night?" "Bei Yunj." This rhetorical question made Bei Yunj speechless. "Last night, I went in to see you." Before Bei Yunj could ask again, the man continued, "You've been running a high fever, so I asked the doctor to give you an 4 drip." "Bei Yunj. That's it. Did Yunyan do something to me in the dream?" The man's thin red lips curled up as he asked with interest. Bei Yunj. She could not believe that she could be so useless in her dream. After being bitten on the neck by the D*MN man, she begged for mercy. What was even more unexpected was that the Huashidu in her dream could be so terrible and do things that made her blush. Yunyun, a person's dream reflects their personal preferences to a certain extent. However, the man still smiled slowly. "Bei Yunj. I'm hungry." After breakfast, Bei Yunj went upstairs and looked at herself in the mirror doubtfully. In the end, there was no mark on the back of her neck. Bei Yunj pondered and slowly went downstairs. Suddenly, "Miss Pei, let me take your temperature." Bei Yunj looked up and saw Jiang Baichuan. She nodded and replied, "Okay, thank you." Jiang Baichuan also secretly glanced at Bai Yunj. From time to time, she touched the spot where she was bitten last night. He looked rather puzzled. Obviously, he didn't know what had happened last night. Jiang Baichuan couldn't help but glance at the elegant man beside him. He was truly a refined scum. This was also the first time Jiang Baichuan realized that this young man could actually lie to a young lady without blushing at all. "Dr. Jiang?" Bai Yunj's voice interrupted Jiang Baichuan's thoughts. "Let's take Miss Pei's temperature first." After regaining his senses, Jiang Baichuan immediately opened the medical box. Until Jiang Baichuan left, Huashida suddenly said, "Yun, I'm going out of the country in 2 days. Do you want to go with me?" Bai Yunj didn't have much to do in the station. He just needed to report to Zhong Shenglin. Sure. Bai Yunj did not look up at Huashidu either. However, when she thought of the dream last night, her ears inexplicably heated up. Why would she have such a dream? The man only curled his lips and didn't say much. The next day, Bai Yunj had just arrived at the Computing Institute when Zhong Shenglin handed a bottle of new medicine to Bai Yunj. "This bottle has just been tested. For now, this new medicine should be the most compatible with you." Bai Yunj smiled. "Thank you, Elder Zhong." Zhong Shenglin couldn't help but mutter in his heart as he drank water. There was no need to thank him. If it wasn't for the person beside her, who would be able to invite Luo Xie to make medicine. Suddenly, "Oh right, I'm going to Continent K the day after tomorrow." Zhong Shenglin choked. Cough cough, where are you going? P.S. Dr. Luo's name has been edited. It's easy to get mixed up. End of this chapter. Chapter 1028. Nance had long said that someone in Continent K was targeting Guer. Now had Guer been discovered? "My brother seems to be doing something in Continent K." Bai Yunj's beautiful eyes curved as she lazily rested her chin on her hand. Zhong Shenglin was silent for a moment before probing, "Mr. Hua?" "Yes." Si Qingyan was speechless. So Huashidu was back. No wonder he was in such a good mood today. That's good. Zhong Shenglin heaved a sigh of relief. If it was Huashidu, then there would be no danger in going to Continent K. "But Guer, I know some people in Continent K. If you want to visit the school or the laboratory, I only plan to play for a few days." Zhong Shenglin's smile froze. All right then. It was harder than ascending to the heavens for his Gu, or to open up more interpersonal relationships. That day, Huashidu took a private plane to Continent K. After arriving at Continent K, Tseng Su brought Bai Yunj back to Huashidu's private manor. Huashidu went to settle some matters. The population density of Continent K was much lower than that of Yuncheng, but the buildings they encountered on the way showed the prosperity of this continent. Continent K is more special, and the difference in regional jurisdiction is also huge. This area is usually crowded at night, and there is no domestic security. Tseng Su reminded her. In Tseng Su's opinion, a pampered young lady like Bai Yunj was indeed not suitable to come to a place like Continent K. "You must bring bodyguards with you when you go out." Tseng Su could not help but remind her again. "Got it." Bai Yunj replied lazily. Private manor. Bai Yunj had just gone upstairs. After looking at her room, she was about to go downstairs for some tea. However, she did not expect to hear someone talking about her. What kind of bewitching potion has Huashida been drugged with? Is a woman worth his attention? He really brought her to the manor? Bai Yunj pondered. The woman that the person downstairs was talking about should be her. Dr. Luo. Tseng Su hurriedly wanted to stop him. However, Luo Xie sneered. "I want to see what kind of fairy he has with him." After saying this, Luo Xie hadn't walked up yet when he suddenly looked up and saw the lazy girl upstairs. Black hair, red dress, snow-white skin, a slender waist, and beautiful eyes that made people not dare to look straight at her. She didn't look like a celestial immortal. Instead, she looked more like a demoness who could bring disaster to countries and people. "Are you the woman beside Huashidu?" Luo Xie regained his senses and asked in an unfriendly tone. Tseng Su had already figured out Bai Yunj's temper. He didn't dare to watch what was about to happen. As expected, Bei Yunj glanced at him and went downstairs. Assistant Sung, I'm going to take a nap later. His meaning was obvious. He wanted Sung Soo to get him out of here. Luo Xia's handsome face was about to change in anger. Wasn't the woman beside Hoshido too arrogant? However, when Sung Soo heard that, he really turned to look at him and said sincerely, Dr. Luo, Master Du will probably be back at night. Why don't you go back first? Miss Pei does have the habit of taking afternoon naps. Luo Xia's expression was about to collapse. He didn't expect even Sung Soo to listen to her so much. She's taking an afternoon nap. Can't I sit here? Luo Xia gave a fake smile. Sung Soo was serious. Miss Pei was sick 2 days ago and needs to rest. What illness? Fever. Luo Xia had studied medicine for so many years, but this was the first time he knew that she needed to rest to reduce a fever. End of chapter. Chapter 1029. Bei Yunj went downstairs to get a plate of fruits. Before she went upstairs, she asked Sung Soo to help her bring the laptop upstairs. Luo Xia looked at this situation. It was obvious that Sung Soo had already treated Bei Yunj as Hoshido's subordinate. Therefore, when Hoshido was not around, Sung Soo only listened to Bei Yunj. Soon, Sung Soo had just sent Bei Yunj's precious laptop upstairs. When he went downstairs, he was stopped by Luo Xia. Assistant Sung, what is she studying? Luo Xia guessed that Bei Yunj should also be a university student. Oh, my Miss Pei is still a third-year high school student. She just took a leave of absence. Sung Soo smiled nonchalantly. Luo Xia could not believe it. She's still a high school student? Sung Soo immediately explained, afraid that Luo Xia would misunderstand Hoshido. Miss Pei is already an adult. She just repeated a grade previously. She still dares to take a leave of absence after repeating a grade? Luo Xia sneered, his eyes full of disdain. He had already treated Bei Yunj as a scheming woman who wanted to cling on to Hoshido. Don't you think that this woman is very scheming? Luo Xia still wanted to remind Sung Soo. However, he did not expect Sung Soo to nod desperately in agreement and anger. I have indeed never seen a woman more terrifying than Miss Pei. It was only because he had secretly reported to Master Du in the district last time. Miss Pei had held a grudge for half a month. Every time she went to the Hua Corporation, she would bring a deck of cards and win all of his year-end bonus. Then do you still think that this woman is compatible with Hoshido? Luo Xia frowned. Sung Soo was stunned. If Master Du thinks they are compatible, then they are. Luo Xia's expression was about to crack. An idea flashed in Sung Soo's mind. He suddenly grabbed Luo Xia's arm sneakily. Dr. Luo, can you do me a favor? My year-end bonus is in Miss Pei's hands. Luo Xia looked at him sideways and gestured for him to continue. Miss Pei said that as long as I finish her homework, she will return it to me. But mathematics is too difficult. I don't dare to blindly do Miss Pei's homework. Can you do me a favor? Although Sung Soo graduated from a famous university, the difficulty of mathematics questions these days were already different from that of his time. When Luo Xia heard this, his face darkened. He immediately called Hoshido. Soon the man's pleasant voice sounded. What's the matter? Master Du, the high school girl beside you even asked your assistant to do her homework. Luo Xia wanted to tell Hoshido that Bei Yunj was arrogant because she was pampered. But in the next moment, Hoshido asked unhurriedly, has Sung Soo finished writing? Luo Xia. What the hell? Sung Soo's math is not very good. Let Sung Soo leave his math homework to Zhou. Hoshido looked at the documents and said slowly, Hongda is quite strict with the quality of the student's homework. Zhou's body trembled. Has the boss become so crazy? He was a high-end talent with a double major in mathematics and finance from Neely University, yet he still had to do high school homework. At this moment, the most unbelievable one was Luo Xia. Hoshido was clearly a person who was self-abiding, polite and indifferent. It was almost impossible to see him favoring anyone. But now, Hoshido had completely lost his bottom line for a woman. Master Du, are you serious? Luo Xia could not help but ask. In 2 days, she will be doing a checkup in your studio. I hope you can do your best and not make any mistakes. Chapter 1030. Me. Before Luo Xie could say anything, the other party hung up. Not long after, Luo Xie left with a dark expression. Back in the laboratory, a little fatty smiled and said, "Boss, you're back. Did you see the forum?" "I'm not free." Luo Xie's expression was ugly. The little fatty knew that his boss was not satisfied with the woman beside Master Du this time. His boss came back with a dark expression. Something must have happened. He leaned forward sneakily. "Boss, the forum said that the Computing Institute won the International Computing Competition." The Computing Institute. Luo Xie's face darkened even more and his gaze was as sharp as a blade. "Zhen Kaikai, this is the first time I've realized that you're not afraid of death." The little fatty trembled and immediately explained. No, boss, listen to me. All the semifinals will be included in this international competition." The little fatty hinted crazily. "Also, only members under the age of 35 are allowed to participate in the competition. Other than Si Qingyan, who else is under the age of 35 in the Computing Institute?" "You know." Luo Xie was stunned. "You're talking about?" "That's right. Boss, haven't you liked her for a long time?" The little fatty continued to smile obsequiously. "How is it, boss? Are you happy? Where is the semifinals?" Luo Xie took a deep breath. The gloominess from before had completely disappeared. What could make a withered tree come back to life more than the power of an idol? "I heard that it's either Continent K or Country J," the little fatty said. "However, rumor has it that although she's quite young, some people say that she's already 35. The little fatty wanted to say something but hesitated. "Boss, you're only 27. Do I need you to teach me what kind of woman I like?" Luo Xie looked at him coldly. The little fatty was speechless. After all, Luo Xie was the target of countless female researchers in the industry. He didn't know what was wrong with him, but he suddenly liked that person who had never shown her face. He even had to say that he had a very special feeling for her. But who in the industry didn't feel that she was special? This was a super genius who had appeared out of nowhere and won 2 major awards in the world. However, everyone knew that she was an idol. She could only be seen from afar and not blasphemed. Only Luo Xie kept thinking that he could become a successful man behind the scenes. Little Fatty's mood was complicated. "Boss, actually, I think you're just..." Luo Xie suddenly interrupted. "You stay in the lab. I'm going out to buy some suits." Little Fatty. Hopefully she wasn't pregnant and wasn't ugly. Otherwise, he would be letting down his boss's yearning for love. The next day, in the bedroom, the person who was too lazy to move asked while biting a cherry lazily. "Little Greg, when can you feed me cherries?" The laptop on the bed that was forced to chat with him automatically turned black. The Gemini system, which had yet to be installed into the robot's body, had learned one of the greatest human skills in the past few days, playing dead. Although it was shameful, it was very useful. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. "Miss Pei?" It was Tseng Su's voice. Bei Yunj raised her eyebrows and went to open the door. "What's wrong?" Dr. Luo said that there will be a lecture by a famous computer professor in the K-Continent Academy. You should go and take a look. Tseng Su remembered that Bei Yunj was very interested in this aspect. There were talents everywhere in the K-Continent Academy. If Miss Pei could make a few friends during this trip, she would definitely benefit. End of chapter. Chapter 1031. Bei Yunj did not say a word. She only smiled politely at Tseng Su and prepared to close the door. "Wait." Tseng Su immediately blocked the door. Bei Yunj raised her eyebrows, but there was no smile in her eyes. "Is there anything else?" Tseng Su's scalp went numb for some reason, and he said pitifully, "Miss Pei, since you've come to Continent K, you should at least walk around. What if Master Du thinks that I'm deliberately not letting you out?" Tseng Su was originally worried that Bei Yunj would be unsafe if she wandered around. However, he did not expect Bei Yunj to be so homebody. Continent K Academy. Bei Yunj chewed on a candy and sat in the back seat without saying a word. Her aura was filled with impatience. Miss Pei, we're here. Sung Soo was excited. Actually, Sung Soo had never been to Continent K Academy, but he knew that it was a top academy. Although it did not participate in the international rankings, its reputation was still not inferior to Neely University. Sung Soo had wanted to go to K University in the past, but unfortunately, K University was very strict with its students. Miss Pei, aren't you excited? This is a top academy. Sung Soo chattered along the way. Bei Yunj answered perfunctorily. However, she did not expect someone to suddenly call her on the way. Miss Pei? Bei Yunj turned around and recognized Luo Xie. Dr. Luo, long time no see. Bei Yunj glanced at him and left after politely brushing him off. Sung Soo was stunned by this scene. Miss Pei really didn't play by the rules as usual. She was so cold and perfunctory that no one could find fault with her. Luo Xie's face darkened as he blocked Bei Yunj. Miss Pei's way of greeting is really special. Where are you going? Sung Soo immediately said. I'm taking Miss Pei to a computer lecture. Computer lecture? Suddenly, a female voice sounded. It was the woman standing beside Luo Xie. That should be my lecture, right? Lai Yunqing smiled. Lai Yunqing was 28 years old, the youngest associate professor in Continent K, and also the deputy director of the 10,000 Computing Institute. Are you Professor Lai? Sung Soo was also very surprised that Lai Yunqing would be so young and beautiful. He was a bit incoherent. You are really young and beautiful, and also very powerful. Bei Yunj glanced at Sung Soo and knew that she wouldn't be able to leave anytime soon. Lai Yunqing glanced at Bei Yunj and smiled gracefully. It seems that this gentleman is more interested in my studies than this lady. Our miss is still young, so we're just bringing her here for a tour. Sung Soo nodded his head like he was pecking at rice. He looked at Lai Yunqing as if he was looking at his idol. Lai Yunqing raised her eyebrows and said thoughtfully, Yes, but I've already finished college when I was 20. Sung Soo didn't notice anything wrong and just chatted with Lai Yunqing. Luo Xie looked at Bei Yunj and suddenly asked, Since Miss Pei is interested in computers, why don't you sit in on the class at K Continent Academy? Sung Soo looked like a parent from Bei Yunj. His eyes lit up as he asked excitedly, Really? Bei Yunj was speechless. This. Lai Yunqing's smile froze. She looked at Luo Xie, not understanding what he meant. Luo Xie glanced at Lai Yunqing. He didn't intend to tell Lai Yunqing that Bei Yunj was brought here by Huashidu. In Continent K and Country R, Huashidu usually only brought Zhouyu with him, so no one recognized Sung Soo. Luo Xie seemed to have thought of something and chuckled. Consider it as giving me face. End of chapter. Chapter 1032. Lai Yunqing's eyes flashed and she regained her smile. Since you say so, I can only agree. Her tone was relaxed. However, if Miss Pei performs well, I can also write a recommendation letter for you. In the future, better universities will still give me some face. Hearing this, Bei Yunj glanced at Lai Yunqing leisurely. Her beautiful eyes seemed to be able to see through all her thoughts. Bei Yunj sneered indifferently. Sung Soo was speechless. It was not harmful, but it was extremely insulting. Indeed, Bei Yunj did not say a word, but Lai Yunqing's expression did not look too good. Assistant Sung, my patience is limited. Bei Yunj turned to look at Sung Soo. There was a hint of coldness in her beautiful eyes. Sung Soo was speechless. Looking at this scene, Luo Xie did not expect Sung Soo to be afraid of Bei Yunj. Miss Pei, people can't rely on others all their lives. Isn't it a good thing to work hard for yourself? Luo Xie asked in an unpleasant tone. He did not understand why Huashidu would fall for such a woman. Dr. Luo. Bei Yunj smiled lazily. Her tone was gentle, but her bright eyes were wild and arrogant. I'm not working hard. I'm leaving some space for others to show off. These words made Luo Xie's handsome face sink. He did not understand why Bei Yunj dared to say such things. Lai Yunqing glanced at Luo Xie and smiled. Is that so? It seems that Miss Pei must have some outstanding points. Why don't you show it to everyone? Hearing this, Bei Yunj looked at Lai Yinqing with interest. Only animals in heat will constantly show off their advantages. Sung Su was speechless. Luo Xie was speechless. Lai Yunqing's face turned green. Fortunately, not long after, someone urged Lai Yinqing to attend the lecture. In the end, they could only leave on bad terms. At the lecture, in the last row, Sung Su also understood this matter. It was not practical for Bei Yunj to make friends, but it was much easier to make enemies. Miss Pei, do you have any friends? Sung Su asked tentatively. Lai Yunqing was such a mature and gentle woman, and she was also a super god. She had enthusiastically said that she wanted to write a recommendation letter for Bei Yunj, but Bei Yunj was unmoved. Bei Yunj's hand froze in the middle of writing the report. However, just as Bei Yunj looked up and was about to speak, Lai Yunqing suddenly said from the stage, "This time, I see that many of you have brought a computer. Let me teach you a little trick to warm up." Lai Yunqing looked at everyone and smiled. Everyone should be interested in deciphering the computer, right? When the students below the stage heard this, they began to discuss excitedly. "Professor Lai, is it difficult to decipher a computer?" Generally, those with strong computer skills would be able to decipher computers. However, the students in the audience were all freshmen, so it was inevitable that they were curious. "It's not that difficult." Lai Yunqing smiled gently. Currently, the best computer defense system is a new product developed by the Higgins Group. Last month, I went to their research team to observe. They are indeed very impressive. The students below the stage started to jeer. Then the professor will definitely be able to crack it. As long as it is a system made by humans, it is not invulnerable, Lai Yunqing said confidently. Then she raised her voice and asked, "Then, which student is willing to lend me a computer, so that I can give everyone a demonstration?" The female student in the last row? Everyone turned their heads, and their eyes fell on Bei Yunj. P.S. Continue tonight. Thank you for your monthly tickets. End of chapter. Chapter 1033. Bei Yunj saved the report, and looked at her unhurriedly. Bei Yunj felt Lai Yunqing's gaze lingering on her for a long time. It seemed to have something to do with Luo Xie. "Don't worry, I won't destroy your computer. I'm just giving everyone a demonstration." Lai Yunqing smiled and said, "If it's damaged, I'll pay you 3 times the amount. You don't mind, right?" Everyone looked at Professor Lai with eyes full of admiration. After all, she was an associate professor at Continent K's academy at the age of 28. Sung Su's expression froze when he heard this. Bei Yunj wasn't a kind person. How could she be expected to do good deeds? However, out of his expectation, Bei Yunj chuckled and said leisurely, "I don't mind. I can't stop you from invading the system." Sung Su was speechless. He didn't know why, but he felt that Miss Pei's gentle demeanor made her seem like a bad person. "But Professor Lai, are you sure you want to choose my computer? It doesn't have a good temper." Bei Yunj looked at the computer on her lap thoughtfully. Bei Yunj had been working on the program for a week in order to design the most accurate robot system. Although she had experience with the basic program in her previous life, Bei Yunj had been improving the system from time to time in order to achieve a high level of precision. Sung Su felt that Bei Yunj's words were a little strange, but he couldn't tell why. Lai Yunqing thought that Bei Yunj was deliberately mystifying things and smiled. "Since you don't mind, Miss Pei can bring it up." Bei Yunj let Sung Su bring her to the stage. Sung Su was well versed in the ways of the world. In order to prevent unnecessary accidents, Sung Su stayed by Bei Yunj's computer. This was Miss Pei's computer. If anything went wrong, Sung Su was afraid that Bei Yunj would smash the entire lecture hall. At this moment, Bei Yunj was sitting in the last row. She was bored to death as she scrolled through the group chat of the Research Institute. She saw a few research institutes gossiping. They said that Continent K's computer scientists were gathering. Something might have happened. Bei Yunj glanced at it, and continued to read the documents. On the stage, Lai Yunqing saw Luo Xie in the first row and his gaze swept across the last row. His gaze sank. She didn't know why, but but she had a feeling that Luo Xie's attitude towards Bei Yunj was a little strange. As a result, she was targeting a junior for no reason. If it was in the past, she would also laugh at her own behavior. But now, she couldn't wait any longer. Lai Yunqing's eyes flashed, then she switched the projection screen to her computer. He wanted to show everyone how he operated it. However, when Lai Yunqing saw the HG logo on Bei Yunj's computer, she frowned. Higgins. However, she remembered that Higgins' latest product didn't include this computer. Even the top-notch configuration sold in auctions was not of this design. A hint of mockery appeared in Lai Yunqing's eyes. Students, the computer system configuration is different, so the difficulty of our hacking will also be different. For example, it would take an expert hacker more than 7 hours to hack into a top-notch computer product of a large enterprise. As for the average random brand, it can be dealt with in 10 minutes. Lai Yunqing started to operate the computer and smiled elegantly. With the configuration of this student's computer, it can be hacked in about 10 minutes. She was saying that Bei Yunj's computer was a random brand. End of chapter. Chapter 1034. When Lai Yunqing said this, she did not notice that the red light on the computer beside her had flashed twice. Sung Su heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Bei Yunj, who was in the last row, did not seem angry. But then, after Lai Yunqing invaded for a few minutes, the confident smile on her face froze. What was going on? She could have succeeded just now. Why couldn't she attack? Lai Yunqing's expression did not change, but her hands sped up. Everyone could see the code appearing crazily on the screen. However, 10 minutes had passed, and Professor Lai still had not attacked this inferior computer. Suddenly, everyone heard the crisp sound of a mechanical system. Undesirable intrusion detected. Please activate the following mode. At the same time, not far away, a few options popped up on Bei Yunj's cell phone. A. Automatic lock, tracking mode. B. Anti-intrusion mode. C. Automatic alarm mode. D. Automatic processing mode. Bei Yunj casually clicked A. Then under everyone's horrified gazes, Little G's mechanical voice continued to enter their ears. Okay, automatic processing mode has been selected. Bei Yunj, who had stopped reading the documents, did not understand Little G's rebellion. Soon, Bei Yunj suddenly remembered that back then, Si Qingyan had complained that this system was not enough for Bei Yunj, and had taken the initiative to help personalize the system. But now Bei Yunj had a strong feeling. Although the robot system had a mandatory ban that could stop all system orders. However, once such a ban was issued, the system would return to its factory settings. In other words, everything would be reset. Bei Yunj thought about it, and only planned to watch the show. At the same time, she wanted to understand what Si Qingyan thought of her. The others did not expect to see an artificial intelligence and a computer science professor fight today. Just as Bei Yunj's order was issued, everyone suddenly saw Bei Yunj's computer screen light up, and a series of codes appeared. Then on the big screen, Lai Yunqing's computer screen suddenly turned black. Lai Yunqing's expression changed. What? Her computer had been counterlocked. The students below the stage pointed and discussed. They could not believe that this inferior computer could lock Lai Yunqing's computer without anyone controlling it. However, the lecture was still going on. Lai Yunqing had no choice but to calm down. She bit her lip, looked at Luo Xie below the stage, and continued to control of the computer. A few minutes later, Lai Yunqing's computer suddenly returned to normal. Lai Yunqing heaved a sigh of relief and prepared for the next round of hacking to save face. When Luo Xie saw this scene, he could not help but turn to look at the last row. He only saw Bei Yunj watching with interest, as if she was not worried at all. Just as expected. Suddenly, when the students and professors in the audience saw what happened next, they were so shocked that they were boiling with excitement. Following Lai Yunqing's computer screen, lines of text appeared on the big screen, revealing little Greg's strong resentment. You're the inferior's computer. Your whole family is made of inferior computers. Everyone. This computer must have become a spirit. Pei Yunj. She shouldn't have installed those 27 miniature pinhole cameras. Soon, Lai Yunqing, whose face was pale, received a series of bullying warnings from little G. Is your system very powerful? Everyone. Question mark. Soon, Lai Yunqing's computer suddenly turned blue. End of chapter. Chapter 1035. Is your CPU very powerful? As soon as little G's mechanical voice fell, everyone saw that Lai Yunqing's computer had completely collapsed. Everyone was dumbfounded. Is your heat dissipation very good? Then, everyone saw that the code on the computer that no one was controlling was flying faster. Soon, Lai Yunqing's computer started to smoke and the entire computer was paralyzed. Lai Yunqing's face was ashen. She could only stand rooted to the ground, not knowing what to do with the artificial intelligence's counterattack. Bei Yunj. Fortunately, the system had not been installed in the robot. Otherwise, Bei Yunj did not doubt that this little thing would take a hammer and smash Lai Yunqing's computer. However, then little G's behavior was still very erratic. It was unknown which of the 27 cameras was recording Lai Yunqing's dark face. Suddenly, Lai Yunqing's face appeared on the projection screen. Little G's crisp and tender mechanical voice sounded as expected. Excuse me, do you think you're very strong? As soon as she finished speaking, there were a few professors and students with laptops in their hands. Their laptops were coldly turned on the sound effects. The same mechanical voice sounded one after another. Excuse me, do you think you're very strong? Excuse me, do you think you're very strong? At first, it was only the laptops on the field, but then it was the phones in everyone's pockets. It was still not very harmful, but it was extremely humiliating. Lai Yunqing's face was as black as the bottom of a pot, and her entire body was trembling. The others felt their scalps go numb. This artificial intelligence had become a demon? Sung Su was also terrified. He instinctively stayed away from this computer that had become a demon. Miss Pei was not to be trifled with, and neither was Miss Pei's computer. Bei Yunj felt that something was wrong. Her eyebrows twitched, and she stood up in time to walk to the podium. Little G stopped the command. As soon as Bei Yunj's voice was recognized, little G suddenly became obedient. Roger that, Master. Moi, Master, Bei Yunj. What did Si Qingyan mean by this setting? At this moment, everyone else's computers and phones returned to normal, as if it was just a dream. However, everyone broke out in a cold sweat. They knew that the scene just now was real. Bei Yunj turned to look at Lai Yunqing's broken computer, and raised her eyebrows. I'm sorry. I told you that it has a bad temper. I'll pay you back 3 times the price. Everyone. This was indeed the first time they had encountered a bad-tempered computer. Wasn't this computer too awesome? Just one word of inferior brand, and the computer crashed on the spot? What kind of computer is this? Lai Yunqing didn't look too good, but she still asked expressionlessly. One could faintly hear the unwillingness in his voice. Professor Lai doesn't understand AI either? Bei Yunj asked with interest. Artificial intelligence? Lai Yunqing's tone was filled with disbelief. She had never thought that AI would have developed to this extent. Assistant Sung, the lecture is almost over. Bei Yunj glanced at his watch and said to Tsing Su. When Sung Su heard this, he walked over to Bei Yunj's computer and touched it tentatively. He didn't dare to hug it. Miss Pei, is it in a good mood now? Bei Yunj. After leaving, the people in the lecture hall were in an uproar. It's amazing. That computer is too cool. Even Professor Lai can't handle it. Is artificial intelligence so powerful? Then one day, will these things really replace us? P.S. Si Qingyan said that little G was modified according to Master Pei's personality. Does little G's attitude towards Master Pei look like Master Pei's attitude towards everyone? Think carefully. She scrolled through the comments and saw someone saying that Master Pei was not doing her job. Master Du had too many scenes? The second person didn't respond. I think it's alright. If they felt that Master Du had too many scenes, they could skip it or give up on the article. Firstly, Master Pei had been doing her research. However, in terms of settings, Master Pei was already at the maximum level, although she did have a huge breakthrough in the later stages. If one went further up the peak of scientific research, it would inevitably be sci-fi. After all, hundreds of years ago, not many people would have imagined the information age and smart homes. These were all the results of scientific researchers. Hence, in the later stages, Master Pei's research career would involve some sci-fi elements, but not much. End of chapter. Chapter 1036. That's impossible. Why is it impossible? Look, even Professor Lai lost to this computer. Many students were talking about it, making Lai Yunqing's face turn pale. On the way, Sang-su sighed. Miss Pei, your computer is so similar to your temper. Bei Yunj was speechless suddenly. Bei Yunj was about to get into the car when Sang-su carefully held the computer in his arms, and a mechanical voice sounded. Bad intrusion detected. Target intercepted. Bei Yunj's eyes flickered. If it was a normal intrusion, little G would ask her how to deal with it. Only when it was a dangerous intrusion would little G automatically intercept the intrusion. Sang-su was so frightened by little G's sudden voice that his hands almost trembled. Bei Yunj's voice was cold. Find out the reason. As soon as she finished speaking, Bei Yunj placed the laptop on the short table in the car. Soon, she saw the data that little G had analyzed automatically. Successfully tracked the IP address data. The range is Aichenli Castle. The intruder is an intruder. There are 7 intruders from the same organization. The area Bei Yunj was in was Aichenli Castle. It was a place where top research universities gathered. The organization behind the attack on such an area probably had an ulterior motive. Miss Pei, what's going on? Sang-su was stunned. He had a feeling that Miss Pei was more powerful than he had imagined. Where's Luo Xie? Call Luo Xie or Lai Yunqing over. After Bei Yunj finished speaking, Sang-su hurriedly ran off to call them. At this moment, Bei Yunj called Zhong Xinglin. Hello Ge? How's Continent K? Are you having fun? Zhong Xinglin asked with a smile. Old master, someone is infiltrating Aichenli Castle in Continent K. Has the Academy of Continent K done any major research recently? Zhong Xinglin's smile froze when he heard Bei Yunj's question. What? How did you know? I was wandering around the Academy of Continent K, and they targeted me. Bei Yunj said slowly. She had seen similar things in her previous life. Most people might find it unbelievable, but Bei Yunj knew very well that every major research by researchers would attract attention and danger from all over the world. Zhong Xinglin did not expect Bei Yunj to be involved in such a thing. He massaged the space between his eyebrows. I heard that the investigation in Continent K has been very strict recently. It seems like something is going to happen. They're still gathering top computational technology researchers to prepare for a meeting. Nothing in the industry could be hidden from them, who had been in the industry for decades. It was just that there were some things that everyone was used to turning a blind eye to for peace and quiet. Guor, you're not planning to interfere in this matter, are you? Zhong Xinglin was somewhat worried. Old master, if their major research is about genetic data, microbial experiments, and so on. Are you really going to let me go? Bei Yunj asked with great interest. Zhong Xinglin was speechless. Bei Yunj seemed to be an indifferent person, but ever since Meng Liang held her hand and entered the laboratory in her previous life, Bei Yunj understood the responsibility of a researcher better than anyone else. Most of the panic in the world came from battles, and the most fatal battle of all mankind might just be a single genetic data leak. Not long after, Zhong Xinglin called and confirmed that a professor in the Academy of Continent K had made a major breakthrough in genetics. Bei Yunj's eyes darkened. She closed the car door and typed on the keyboard. End of chapter. Chapter 1037. Not long after, Bei Yunj entered the K Continent Academy's website. Old master, does the K Continent Academy have any security alarms? Bei Yunj asked. Zhong Xinglin was stunned. You went in just like that. To be honest, even he felt his scalp go numb when he heard Bei Yunj's hacking speed. That was too fast. How could the K-Continent Academy's security system be like a piece of tofu to Bei Yunj? Was it just a piece of tofu? Yeah. I remember that when K University's system was hacked more than 10 years ago, there was an alarm system that would go off. But this time, the hacker must have a good understanding of K University, so they might not trigger the alarm. Bei Yunj thought for a moment before the corners of her lips suddenly curled up into a casual and unrestrained smile. They won't, but I will. Zhong Xinglin had a bad feeling. A few minutes later, Bei Yunj's fingers moved even faster on the keyboard and hacked the entire system. In an instant, Bei Yunj accurately triggered the alarm system. A beam of light shot out from the top of a tall tower not far away and circled around the school. The alarm went off. Everyone in the K-Continent Academy noticed it. Someone was hacking their school's system. On the other side of Fort Aikenley, 7 people were still hacking. Boss, the K-Continent Academy isn't that powerful. We've been hacking for so long, but no one noticed us. Someone couldn't help but say smugly. That person smirked. Don't be careless. Let's get the thing first. Once we're done, we'll throw a celebration party. What's wrong with that? The K-Continent Academy is just a bunch of good-looking but useless idiots. The rest of us can't even compare to them. Brothers, let's just get this over with. The other person's tone was sarcastic, and his eyes showed that he was determined to win. After all, this was a meticulous plan. They didn't think there was any possibility of failure. However, the moment he said that, their computer screens suddenly showed that the system had crashed. They didn't even have time to hide their smiles before their eyes widened in shock. Who hacked the K-Continent Academy's system? K-Continent Academy's security system was created by a top hacker in the early years. Even if it was them, they would only dare to invade the loopholes of the K-Continent Academy. But now, someone had actually hacked the entire system? The 7 of them were stunned at first. They couldn't figure out which immortal had done this. However, the sudden sound of the alarm made them lose the mood to continue thinking. The leader of the group of 7 stood up abruptly. Didn't I tell you? They have an alarm and told you not to trigger it. Who triggered the alarm? The pale-skinned young man roared in a hoarse voice, as if he was gnashing his teeth. The people from K-Continent Academy had long been on guard against them. Once the alarm went off, their chances of success would drop by at least half. I didn't trigger the alarm. Me neither. Boss, could it be that someone else triggered the alarm? Someone muttered in a low voice. Hearing this, only then did the pale-skinned youth recall that someone had hacked into the K-Continent Academy system. But why would that person trigger the alarm if he could hack the Academy system so discreetly? They could not understand. Then someone guessed. Could it be that someone is deliberately showing off to the K-Continent Academy? Hacking the school system and deliberately triggering the alarm. Wasn't this behavior too arrogant? Chapter 1038. But why did it have to be at this time? All of a sudden, they had a bold idea. Someone wanted to make them the scapegoat. The faces of the few of them instantly turned ugly. B-boss, can we still get the information? The young man's expression turned ugly. He glanced at them and quickly started typing on the keyboard. But not long after, the young man realized one thing. His location had been counter-tracked. In an instant, the young man's expression darkened. This was also the first time he realized that there was actually someone who could suppress him to the point that he had no room to fight back in this aspect. He couldn't stop the other party's intrusion at all. If this continued, they would definitely be exposed. Retreat. The young man gritted his teeth and said unwillingly. The others heard this and felt their scalps tingle. Who was this person who could force their boss to retreat? At the same time, Bei Yunj was still holding a candy wrapper in her hand. She leaned against the back seat with interest and slowly checked the other party's computer. Those who didn't know better would think that she was browsing through her own documents. Bei Yunj didn't intend to track the other party's location. She flipped through the documents and turned off the computer after confirming that the other party hadn't achieved his goal. At this moment, someone knocked on the car window. Bei Yunj had just opened the car door when she heard Sung Soo say, Miss Pei, Dr. Luo is here. Why are you looking for me? Luo Xie's tone was cold and his expression looked as if someone owed him a few hundred yuan. Bei Yunj looked up at Luo Xie and smiled lazily. Dr. Luo, is there a bar near the K-Continent Academy? Luo Xie couldn't hold back his expression. Xing Su's smile froze. Miss Pei looked so serious just now. He thought that she had something important to ask Dr. Luo. In the end, she just wanted to ask Dr. Luo where a bar was. Miss Pei. Xing Su was on the verge of tears. If Master Du knew that Miss Pei went to a bar, his year-end bonus for the next few years would be gone. Luo Xie's expression was gloomy as he said word by word, hopeless. As soon as he finished speaking, Lai Yunqing walked to Luo Xie's side and said gently, Luo Xie, accompany me to the conference room. Something happened in the hospital. Luo Xie suppressed his anger and took a deep breath. Okay. After that, Luo Xie glanced at Bei Yunj and chuckled. Miss Pei, see you tomorrow. Bei Yunj raised her eyebrows. She still didn't understand what Luo Xie meant. In the conference hall, when Luo Xie and Lai Yunqing arrived, they found that the atmosphere was heavy. Many people were computer experts. Professor Lai, please take a seat. The dean rubbed his forehead. His scalp still felt numb when he thought about what had just happened. Something very serious happened today. I'm sure everyone can guess what it is. He took a deep breath. Someone hacked our system. Hearing this, the people in the seats were like ants on a hot pan, discussing animatedly. Not long after, someone said, Dean, since you've asked us to do this, of course we want to help. But there was actually someone who could hack into the K-Continent Academy's system. This is too ridiculous. This person is definitely not simple. Someone immediately chimed in. Yeah, this system was created by the first Busaka Prize winner, Hesselink. After so many years, who can surpass him? P.S. At least 4 chapters today. Also, Old Su has been sending you red packets for a week. End of chapter. Chapter 1039. If they hadn't seen the system being hacked with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed that such a person existed. Thinking of this, their scalps went numb. Someone broke down mentally. Director, if the opponent is already at this stage, we can't guard against it. Today, Continent K Academy had only gathered hundreds of computer experts. But even if Continent K Academy could invite Marcus from Country R and Zhong Shenglin from Country A, they might not be able to guard against it. Suddenly, Lai Yunqing finished observing the hacked website and said, Director, the person who hacked the system is not that group of people. What? How do you know? The others quickly looked at Lai Yunqing. Lai Yunqing smiled. I've fought with that group of people before. The person who hacked the system might have deliberately triggered the alarm system. Hearing this, everyone reacted. That meant that there was a big shot helping them behind the scenes. Everyone was ecstatic, and their desire to ride on someone's coattails grew stronger. Who is helping them behind the scenes? The others were also discussing excitedly. When did such a ruthless person appear in Continent K? Below the stage, a person appeared in Luo Xie's mind. But it shouldn't be possible to come to Continent K silently. Thinking of this, Luo Xie's heart felt empty. Professor Lai, you know many people in the industry. Do you know the person who is helping us secretly? After someone asked this question, everyone's gaze fell on Lai Yunqing. Lai Yunqing smiled. Senior helping us secretly means that he doesn't want to show his face. However, I know that Mr. Nancy from Country R has recently come to Continent K. Mr. Nancy? The founder of Higgins? Instantly, the crowd was in an uproar. They looked at Lai Yunqing with even more envy. Lai Yunqing was too lucky. She even knew a retired top big shot like Nancy. That's right. I had the opportunity to meet Mr. Nancy before. My father is his student. This time, I can try to contact Mr. Nancy. Lai Yunqing smiled faintly. Mr. Nancy should be able to help us. Hearing this, everyone looked at Lai Yunqing with more admiration and envy. Lai Yunqing was also used to such a halo. She subconsciously looked at the absent-minded Luo Xie and couldn't help but smile. Inside the manor, Bei Yunj had just returned home when she received a phone call. Max, where are you now? The caller was Kay, the founder of the chaos. What happened? Bei Yunj asked lazily. Are you in Continent K? Something strange happened in K Continent today. Someone hacked into the K Continent Academy's system. Kay was shocked. Bei Yunj couldn't help but ask, can't I? This is a system created by the first Busaka Prize winner, Hesselink. For so many years, no one dared to challenge him. After saying that, Kay sighed inexplicably. Okay, I got it. Then it shouldn't be you. I thought you were in cahoots with the terrorists and wanted to persuade you to turn back. Bei Yunj. If there's nothing else, I'm hanging up. Wait. Before Kay could finish, Bei Yunj hung up. Kay. Didn't he say that he would hang up if there was nothing else? Meanwhile, Bei Yunj turned her head, thinking that the footsteps just now were because someone had returned. She didn't expect it to be Zhou Yu. Bei Yunj's smile disappeared and Zhou Yu felt a chill down his spine. End of chapter. Chapter 1040. Miss Pei. Zhou Yu had been in Continent K for so many years. Other than Huashidu, Bei Yunj was the first person who gave him a strong sense of oppression. Where is my brother? Bei Yunj's voice was clear. When Huashidu was not around, it sounded cold. Zhou Yu said, Master Du will be back later today. He wants you to eat early and rest well. Bei Yunj glanced at him indifferently and went upstairs. Okay. Zhou Yu's back was already covered in cold sweat. Old Zhou, why did you come back first? Sung Su asked curiously. Master Du asked me to come over and tell Miss Pei. Zhou Yu suddenly remembered. Oh right, find time to give me Miss Pei's math homework. Sung Su was speechless. The next day, Bei Yunj went downstairs and sat under the huge European-style window. She chewed on her bread and looked at the rose garden outside. When Sung Su walked over, Bei Yunj asked slowly, Brother left again? Sung Su immediately explained. Miss Pei, Master Du did have something urgent to attend to these 2 days. However, Master Du will come and fetch you after your health checkup. Bei Yunj paused. Health checkup? Yes, Master Du has been planning to bring you to Dr. Luo for a long time. Sung Su nodded vigorously. Dr. Luo is very skilled in medicine, especially in psychotherapy. I'm not free. Bei Yunj rejected him perfunctorily. I still have to study. Sung Su thought for a while and could only call Huashidu in front of Bei Yunj. Bei Yunj suddenly stood up and glanced at Sung Su casually. She said with a faint smile, I'll go and change. Sung Su, who felt threatened, said, Thank you, Miss Pei. Soon, Bei Yunj arrived at Luo Xie's laboratory. In the laboratory, 4 or 5 researchers were chatting. Do you think there are any other beautiful girls in our circle besides Professor Lai? Damn, what a beautiful girl. Suddenly someone exclaimed. Hearing this, the other person rolled his eyes. Come on, what kind of beauty can there be in this godforsaken place? Before he could finish his sentence, the researcher turned around and saw that Bei Yunj had taken off her hat. Her slender, fair fingers casually brushed her loose black hair. Her beautiful eyes were unruly and bright, and they were dazzling. Wasn't this lady too beautiful? Assistant Sung. Some people were stunned when they saw Sung Su. Sung Su smiled and looked at Bei Yunj. Miss Pei, this is Dr. Luo's laboratory. Bei Yunj glanced at her and responded indifferently. She then sat down on the sofa in the lounge area. The others were discussing wildly. It can't be? Are you here to look for Boss? Boss, don't you like her? How could he know such a beautiful girl? If you put this face in the entertainment industry, you'll be beaten to a pulp. Everyone hadn't finished talking when Luo Xie and Lai Yunqing came in together. This made the people who usually thought that Lai Yunqing had the halo of a goddess suddenly feel that Lai Yunqing's goddess halo was unusually dim today. Miss Pei is here too? The smile on Lai Yunqing's face stiffened. Come with me. Luo Xie only threw this sentence at her before he changed into his white coat and walked into a private room. Bei Yunj had just stood up when Sing-Su followed her closely. Sing-Su was still on guard. After all, their Miss Pei was so beautiful. Although Dr. Luo hated Miss Pei, he couldn't help but find her face more and more pleasing to the eye. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.